Okay, at this time, I'd like everyone to please be seated. We'll get started with the meeting. Okay, I'm going to call the March 10th meeting to order and ask that everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Could we have roll call, please, Mrs. Zito?
Mayor Borelli,
Here.
Councilmember Clarici,
Here.
Vice Mayor Patton,
Here.
Councilmember Thomas,
Here.
Councilmember Wilkins.
Here. Okay, we're going to begin tonight with my State of the City address. This is something I think was done a while back, but it's been quite a while, and I kind of thought we needed to revive it. So, I'll begin with good evening again. It is indeed an honor to begin my third term on the Placerville City Council serving as your mayor. I thought it appropriate to deliver a short report outlining the current status of our city. Our vision statement says, a unique historical past forging into a golden future, and I look forward to assisting in preserving our unique historical past and to help move us forward into that golden future. As I begin my address, I want to first recognize those who helped make Placerville such a special place to live, work, and play. First, the wonderful citizens without whom Placerville would not be the great place it is today. I want to recognize our business owners and their employees who dedicate their lives not only to the success of their businesses, but to the success of our community. Next, I recognize and applaud my fellow council members, Vice Mayor Carol Patton and council members John Clarici, Wendy Thomas, and Tricia Wilkins. Each of us brings to this council a set of unique perspectives and experiences, allowing for thorough deliberations of all the issues that come before us. Our focus is to work together with a mutual desire to make Placerville even better than it is today. Running a city is complicated, no matter what the size. It requires attention to a large, indefinite number of details. Our excellent administration and staff work harder than most people realize in order to keep our city roads, water sewer systems, parks, and law enforcement, etc., operating smoothly. It is the job of your elected officials to oversee and direct the efforts in planning for our future and protecting the historic resources we have. I would like to continue a program that was begun by former Mayor Mark Acuna, the Mayor's Beautification Award. Each month, a commercial building or home that has either been newly built or remodeled and has made a noted improvement in the surrounding area will be recognized. In culmination of each month's award, one special award will be presented at the end of the year. We are in the process of announcing the 2014 award soon. The year 2014 was a great year in many respects. Placerville was successful in winning and completing the Benjamin Moore Paint What Matters contest, which entitled us to free building facade painting of 3 blocks of our historic downtown businesses. We were named one of the top 16 main streets in America by Parade magazine. We recently were ranked number 28 in the 50 best small towns in America by Best Choice Reviews and placed number 5 of the top 10 places to retire in California by Smart Asset. Clearly, we are doing a lot of things right. As we continue to recover from the recession, our business climate continues to improve. More building permits for remodels and additions are being pulled as people become more optimistic about the economy. Eschaton Village has begun the process for another phase of their development, and more homes are being built on the ridge at Orchard Hill subdivision. Thankfully, we have been able to restore the 10% salary decrease our employees took 4 years ago, and City Hall is once more open 5 days a week. No more Friday closing. The lengthy Western Placerville Interchange Phase 1A project was completed. Bike trails and segments of the El Dorado Trail were and are being completed. Funding and plans were completed for the downtown streetscape plan, and construction is currently underway. We are in the midst of a financial software conversion which will provide customer-friendly features such as online information and bill pay options for business licenses and utility bills. The city is also exploring other online services such as building permit applications and recreation program registration. We have begun development of a new website which is poised to be released this spring. A hotel feasibility study is necessary as it will show us how that construction will help us in marketing our city and attracting new investment and tourism. Of most importance, we have functioned with a balanced budget. We continue to be conservative with our spending as we strive towards restoring our reserves for the next rainy day. Placerville is moving forward, but with challenges. We continue to see progress as we plan for the future. A city is a living, growing thing. It requires care and feeding. It must be maintained and improved. Stagnation is any city's enemy. A city that strives to only live in its past runs the risk of losing its life force. To keep Placerville vital and growing, we must improve our entire aging infrastructure. This includes roads, bridges, water sewer lines, etc. We want tourists to come to a place that honors its Old West heritage, but they will not be attracted to one that is showing signs of present deterioration. Long-term planning and making tough decisions in the decision-making process is necessary. We have made some strides towards those improvements. Each year, thanks to our citizen-approved Measure H sales tax, we were able to dedicate close to $500,000 towards repair and replacement of sewer and water lines. This past year, we obtained 2 water conservation grants from the state for aging water line improvements, one for $950,000 and another for $745,000. The Measure H sales tax revenue will also help us to provide matching funds for these and future grants, which we will aggressively pursue. Of larger concern to our community is our deteriorating roads. In 2014, we identified $19 million in deferred road maintenance. That number will continue to rapidly grow until we identify a specific funding source for road maintenance. Last year, we attempted to pass a sales tax measure with 3/4 of the gained revenue going towards said maintenance. Survey statistics showed us that our population doubles daily with the entry of citizens who come here to work, to do business, or as tourists. We welcome all of them. But what this also tells us is that the usage of our roads are doubled by this daily influx, with the costs of trying to maintain them falling on the shoulders of our local taxpayers. We felt a sales tax with a guaranteed citizen oversight committee similar to what we have with Measure H would be a fair compensation to help defray our maintenance costs. The remaining 1/4 of the revenue was earmarked to upgrade our current police services building and to save our old city hall from any future further deterioration. Unfortunately, the measure failed by a very small percentage. We need to identify ways to fund these and other facilities, including our parks and swimming pool, from deterioration due to lack of basic maintenance. Placerville has a bright future. We need to be proactive in order to achieve our potential. I will continue to work with the council and our staff to find innovative ways to resolve our challenges. We will continue to look for solutions to fund our infrastructure problems, including potentially another sales tax measure. I will continue to promote cooperation and partnerships with the county in areas of recreation programs, park facilities, road maintenance, and especially regional planning. If we work together, we can meet the needs of the greater Placerville area. This requires cooperation and coordination with agencies and governments at the regional, state, and federal level. Progress cannot happen without the help of others. If we work together, we can meet the needs of the greater Placerville area and be successful together rather than competing against each other. We need to move into the 21st century. Technology is critical to the success of our government and our business community. High-speed internet is a key to promoting new business and new job growth. I will promote efforts to expand our technology and bring us what we need to succeed. I will continue to pursue the development of additional quality hotels in our city so those who want to visit can enjoy our community for more than just one day. I remain optimistic and excited about this year. We will succeed with our goals as we commit to working together to make our golden nugget shine. We will continue to listen to you, our citizens, and facilitate open communication. We welcome your comments and suggestions about how we can improve. I can't emphasize enough how important your role is. Please be actively involved and help us craft a future for Placerville that meets your needs, a place that ensures a great city for generations to come. Thank you for your continued support. Thank you. Okay, next we have the Police Department report. Chief Heller.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. This will be a snapshot of our crime statistics of 2014, followed by an IA summary for the same year. So basically external statistics and then followed by internal statistics. So the good news is that our major crimes are down in the city. In 2014, we saw an approximate 11% decrease in Part 1 crimes, which are the majors highlighted up there. Crimes against persons includes rape, robbery, homicide, arson, and aggravated assault. And then property crime, Part 1 crimes include burglary, larceny, and auto theft. What's interesting is while the major crimes have taken significant decreases, for example, if you look at the chart up there, burglaries are down 36%, substantial decrease, and most of that occurred in the second part of 2014. The first part of 2014 ran pretty much parallel to 2013, but the second part of the year took a substantial decrease. However, if you notice, the lesser crime of larceny, simple thefts, upticked 7%. So, and we see an interesting parallel with crimes against persons. We see significant, mostly flat, but significant decrease in the area of ag assaults, which is decreased substantially. But in the area of simple assaults, which would be simple batteries and whatnot, we do see a slight uptick. So, we attribute that to some of the environment that we're currently in with the prison realignment, also the recent passage of Prop 47, and the idea being that the lower grade criminals returning to the streets are going to engage in lower grade crime. And so it's not really rocket science to put that together. So, and we're seeing this trend throughout the state, so it's not unique here in Placerville. But the good news is, again, is major crimes are down. As far as some of the challenges we had in 2013 leading up to 2014, the habitual transient offender issue was, for the first time, we saw a decrease near the middle of 2014 in contacts and calls for service in dealing with that challenge. During the second part of 2014 and the end of summer, we saw a slight uptick, but mostly it's leveled out. So we're not seeing the increases we had seen in the last 2.5, 3 years. So that's good news. We believe it's returning to sort of a more maintenance mode, where a more manageable mode, the numbers, et cetera. So, and that'll enable our outreach efforts, I believe, to be more successful as we partner with mental health. And we, during this year, we sent our officers to a partnership with Folsom to update mental health, critical incident training, et cetera, to deal with these issues. So all these things coming together, I think, are helping to manage our crime level in the city. The other thing I wanted to talk about is what we did during the year that I think also helped bring this rate down. Mostly the second part of the year, we deployed some plainclothes operations, in the parking garage and along the downtown area. We also stepped up our use of technology through social media, broadcasting wanted suspects and other things on Facebook and Twitter. We also have the app, which has gained more and more people are using it, and there's a part in there, a module that allows reporting of crime complaints, both either with a name or anonymously. And so we get a lot of those, and we can track patterns. As you know, there's a crime mapping module in there to look at what crimes have occurred in the last 24 hours, week, month, et cetera. The other thing that we've done is we've worked on some areas. I brought some of the officers in. We've talked about these things in council meetings for quite some time. We're now to a point where the rubber sort of meets the road, and so we have tentatively taken possession of a demo electric motorcycle, and we're holding on to that in safekeeping for the time being. And we also have our bicycles. And so we have our two of our bicycle units fully outfitted. Our officers went and took the post-certified training approximately 2 weeks ago. So they are now certified by Peace Officers Standard and Training to ride bicycles. I know that sounds funny, but so anyway, I brought them along. And before I transition into internal statistics, I was going to have them come out so you could get a look at some of the equipment that we have worked on with the support of the council this past year, and we believe is going to have some great success going forward on our bike trails and jogging trails. So if you guys want to roll that stuff out. Also, one of the officers has one of the body-worn cameras that we're currently testing, so that would help too. So there's no emissions, and it's silent, right? Can you bring it out further? Or?
Now that's show and tell.
So this thing is very quiet, which allows plenty of applications. It doesn't cause noise problems on the bike path, joggers, the same way a patrol car would, or a Cushman, which is gas operated. Very, very minimal impact on the environment. And also the advantage is along some of our less traveled areas, perhaps Reservoir Alley at times or whatnot, this unit, along with the bicycle can take a stealthy approach and perhaps catch somebody that chooses to have a can of spray paint in their hands or something like that. Very difficult to hear this coming versus the patrol car common engine noise. So
That is great.
There. Officer Zacharias, if you notice, has a prototype body-worn camera on her right collar there. Once you come a little closer, it's pretty small.
Wow.
So that's affixed to her collar. She has a switch there that turns that on and off. We're prepared to formally begin the testing of that here this week. So we have 2 of those units that we received from the grant prior. And so Bike Officer Luke Goodall is one of 4 currently certified bike officers, and that's the standard issue police bicycle, right, Luke? Yeah. Okay. And then Sergeant Mayseal has, of course, the electric bike. So at this point, I guess, before I transition into external stats, I'd just like to open it up for a quick minute or two if there were any questions regarding any of this.
Carol, I know, has a question right off the bat.
I do. Are there sirens on the motorcycle or even the
There,
bike?
there are sirens on both, and they're quite loud.
On the
But
bike too, huh?
I would need a majority of hands
We don't
to
need a
turn that on.
demonstration, just an answer.
Very cool.
I'm just curious, what, you said that they receive special training for bicycle as well as, what kind of training do you need for, is it for the bicycle? I'll start with that one.
Officer Goodall, why don't you come over here real quick? You spent a day.
You can go to the
doing
podium,
training.
I've got that mic on.
Or the
If you-
podium. You want to give them a quick couple sentences of your rundown? You spent 8 hours down there trekking through bike paths, et cetera, with, go ahead.
Yeah, so we spent the day at Modesto with their bike patrol, and basically drove our bikes through the whole city of Modesto, it felt like, through the cities, upstairs, downstairs, even through their parks. There was trenches that we had to go down hillsides with cliffs, so it was awesome. It was pretty good. It was a pretty good experience. Basically, we learned techniques on how to contact people on the bikes. There's certain techniques, as well as contacting suspects on the bikes as well, and vehicle pullovers as well, believe it or not.
Wow.
Really?
So, yeah.
And were you guys a little sore the next day? Or?
Yeah, to say the least.
So why I have you up there, I'd like to just take another minute to recognize Officer Goodall. Here for the year 2014, Officer Goodall was named by the American Legion as the Placerville Police Department of the Year, or Police Officer of the Year.
And while you mention that, I would like to also request, we've done this in the past, but for some reason, we used to get the notice when when they had the dinners honoring these folks, and we don't hear about it. And we'd appreciate knowing when this is going to happen. So maybe we could.
We'll make sure that happens.
you.
We actually received the notice 2 days. It was very short this year. There was a turnover in the person that used to run the award,
Okay.
but we'll get it fixed.
Okay, but we'd like to be a part of the ceremony, so thank you.
Absolutely.
I have a quick question, too.
Yes,
How many
Tricia.
officers do we have trained on the motorcycle as of now and on the bike?
Currently, we have 4 certified on the bicycle. We have 1 right here certified on the motor, and another officer scheduled to be trained and certified on the motor unit. And the motor unit training is the same. Motorcycle post training is the same, whether it's the electric or the gas powered, whether
That's
it's
what
the
I was
Harley to
wondering
BMW. Yeah, same procedures.
Ah,
Wow.
This performs. Maybe can you put the kickstand down? And you rode this thing. Give him just a quick assessment of this bike, because he's rode the Harley for quite a while, and he's the one that field tested this unit. And I'm told it goes 0 to 60 in 4 seconds. I assume that means it's pretty fast. But can you speak to that, Sarge, just for a quick second? Yeah. Or here. You want this?
Process. Yeah.
It's normal motorcycle, just not gas powered. It handles very similar to the Harley. In my opinion, it's actually more nimble than the Harley. Easier to turn, easier to go through up the bike trails and stuff like that. With the narrow streets in Placerville, you can turn on cars quickly. Very quiet for the stealthy approach stealthy approach if you're trying to sneak up on somebody. It's very powerful. It'll handle freeway speeds, no problem. It's normal motorcycle, just it's electric powered.
how do the weights compare with this versus a regular motorcycle?
This is much lighter than the Harley. It's probably half the weight of a Harley. I think this weighs just under 400 pounds, where the Harley weighs probably about 800 pounds. The battery in this is on the bottom of the bike, so it's got a lower center of gravity, so it's easier to turn. It's easier to maintain your balance on it.
And just one more thing to add is this particular motorcycle is manufactured right here in California. In, I
Great.
believe it's Santa
That's
Cruz.
exciting.
It's manufactured in Santa Cruz, so.
Oh, wow, that's great. Any questions for, okay?
This is probably for the chief. When you're patrolling the bike trail, will there be an opportunity or some enforcement or, I don't know, education opportunities to let people know etiquette for walking, who's supposed to be on the right and who's supposed to be on the left? Because it's been a problem. And I don't know what the goal is, if it's just to look for, bad guys, because there are a lot of people that use it that don't really use it correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. A big component, and we find this in most traffic operations, whether it's DUI checkpoints or pedestrian operations, is the education component. And a lot of people think, for example, the DUI checkpoint this last holiday, we had some feedback of, well, why did you announce it so much on social media? Why did you put it out to everybody? How are you going to catch people? Well, the idea is we know we're not going to catch everybody, because when we're dealing with one drunk driver, the other 5 or 6 are going. So the reality is we want to educate everybody, and if we can prevent those other 5 or 6, in other words, doing the right thing, then we've achieved our goal. So absolutely, we will be education will be a huge component along the bike trail, and also with the schools as well.
Great.
Well, I'm impressed. Wendy, did you?
Yeah, Chief Heller, I just want to commend you for being so proactive and looking for ways to increase the service to our community and our citizens in creative new ways, and I think it's really fantastic. Really
Well, I appreciate it, but it all goes to these guys.
Well,
we realize
They're
it.
all, they want to be out there, they want to do this, and
Exactly.
it's, sometimes it
Absolutely.
feels like we're moving slow because these things take time, but we're there now, right? So this is good.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank you so much for the presentation, guys.
Officer Zach Rice can just walk here real quick. You want to take a look at what that live body cam looks like.
Smile.
It's not recording right now.
Do you have a way to hook it up so we can see a first-person view of what it looks like?
We will. From the body,
Yeah, like we can watch her walk around.
oh, right now, no.
No.
But we intend to come back with a report on, within the 3 months on, and we'll try to get some video clips or something.
Is that turned on now? Is it?
Yeah, it's on right now. Yeah.
That is fantastic.
That's amazing. He's not out the door yet. He may not get out.
Okay, so I'll transition quickly into the internal affairs summary for the department for 2014. The internal affairs section of the police department is responsible for investigating and tracking complaint investigations based on citizens' complaints and internally generated complaints. The support division commander oversees IA and reports directly to the chief's office. IA is also responsible for conducting audits, officer-involved shooting investigations, and other critical incident or threshold incident investigations. IA records are maintained in the chief's office, and they include complaints, uses of force, pursuits. Incidents are tracked and analyzed to ensure the department adheres to the best practices in law enforcement and to determine individual and organizational training needs. So this is just some background on what a complaint is. A complaint is defined by the Placerville Police Department as an allegation of misconduct by an employee, which, if found to be true, could result in disciplinary action. These complaints can be generated either externally or internally, and they can also be informal or formal. So an informal complaint is a minor issue that's handled at the frontline supervisor level. It's also documented and retained, but it's retained as an informal complaint. A formal complaint is a written complaint from a citizen or an internal complaint generated by staff or supervisor. Complaint categories are generally classified into a primary allegation of what's up there, which is conduct, service, theft, policy, force, procedure, sexual, attitude, racial, and law. And these are pretty standard classifications. A complaint disposition or finding is generally classified into one of these final dispositions, which is sustained, which means the employee has committed the act, the misconduct occurred. Then there's not sustained, which doesn't necessarily mean it did not occur. It just means there's not enough evidence to clearly prove or disprove the allegation. And then there's exonerated, which means the complaint, the facts of the complaint are true, they did occur, however, they were within policy and law. It was perhaps a misunderstanding of what department policy is. And then unfounded means the allegations were factually found without basis. And then closed is a special circumstance for, if somebody resigns prior to the end of a disposition or something like that. So for 2014, we had a total of 8 internal affairs investigations in the department, and 5 of those were generated externally from citizen complaints, and 3 were internally generated investigations. Division supervisors investigated 5 of these cases, and 3 were investigated by an external investigator due to a variety of reasons, commonly perhaps a conflict in the chain. If you recall, we spent most of the year with one lieutenant, and now that we had 1 division commander. Now that we have the 2 division commanders, the support division commander can pretty much routinely fill that role of the investigation. Citizen complaints were made in the following categories this past year. There were 2 related to conduct, 1 related to force, 1 related to attitude, 1 related to service. And again, these are the citizen complaints. I'll get to the internal ones in a second. And there's a visual depiction of the citizen complaints by category. Again, conduct, force, attitude, and service. And then the disposition of the citizen complaints, 3 of those were sustained and 2 were unfounded. If I go back 2 slides, the dispositions are recorded on this slide as well. So as you can see, the force complaint was unfounded and the service complaint unfounded. However, 2 conduct complaints were sustained and 1 attitude complaint was sustained. And as I indicated in the staff report, this report is as transparent as we can be in accordance with the law as to what we can provide per personnel rules and law, et cetera. So I can report on numbers, statistics, et cetera, but I can't report on names or actual discipline from investigations and that sort of thing. But this is as transparent as we can get, which I think is important for the public to know what happens with this sort of investigation. So moving to internally generated complaints, we generated 3 internally this year. 1 was conduct, 1 was procedure, and 1 was policy, for a total of 3. And all 3 complaints were sustained. I think that probably is attributed to an internally generated complaint. Quite often is from a frontline supervisor or somebody who has seen something which has caused them to take action, which they generally can be a witness to it. So that's the thinking there. So here's a comparison to put this in perspective. In 2014, we had 16,365 total calls for service. That's about 12% increase from the previous year, and about a 20 to 25% increase over the last 2 years. So the workload is increasing along with perhaps the economy getting a little traction, I guess we can attest to. We had, out of that 16,365, we had 557 total arrests. We issued 560 citations. We used force 11 times. We received documented commendations 14 times. That's citizen commendations or letters or that sort of thing. We had a use of force complaint 1 time. Interestingly enough, it was not inclusive of those 11. It was a medical aid situation with an allied agency that didn't involve force by this department, but in the interest of transparency and disclosure, we include that in there. And a total of 8 external and internal complaints. So as you see up there, obviously on the left, that real tall tower is the calls for service, 16,365, and then it falls down, and it puts in perspective that out of that many contacts, we arrested 557 people, issued 560 citations, and only used force 11 times, and only generated 8 complaints, yet we received 14 citizen commendations. And so to put that in sort of a statistical representation here, in essence, out of 16,365 total contacts in 2014, a complaint was made on one of our officers approximately 0.05% of the time, which translates to roughly about 1 out of every 2,000 contacts results in a complaint. Conversely, about 1 out of every 1,000 contacts results in a citizen commendation. So we're twice as likely to generate a citizen commendation than we are a complaint, which is a good thing. Let's see here. Force was used approximately 0.07% of the time. And so that represents about a 1 out of 1,500 ratio. About out of every 1,500 citizen contacts, force was actually used. And we arrested 557 times, and that includes felony, misdemeanors, all arrests, warrants, etc. And out of those 557 arrests, force was used 11 times, which again equates to about 1 out of 50 arrests actually requires use of force. So these are the numbers that, being transparent, put it, I believe, in perspective as to what your police department is doing and how they're dealing with our citizens and customer service, etc. And then same thing with citations. It sort of mirrors the arrest, that next paragraph down there. When compared to 560 citations issued in 2014, a citizen complaint was made about 1.4% of the time, which I think is significant because actually citations quite often generate more complaints than arrests, because arrests, there seems to be a little more ownership sometimes than the person that gets a ticket for a traffic violation. A commendation was made 2.5% of the time during, when you put it in that perspective, and force was only used 2% of the time. So of the 11 uses of force, there was a 9% rate of a citizen complaint. But again, that's a little bit of an anomaly because the one complaint we had wasn't directly related to the 11 uses of force. So anytime you sort of put these statistics together, sometimes you end up with an outlier such as that. But I think, again, in the interest of transparency, we absolutely report that. And it was an unfounded force complaint that didn't stem from force used by this agency. So, so anyway, those are the numbers on the bottom there. It just reiterates that, you know, out of 16,365 police contacts in 2014, force was used approximately 7/100% of the time, and a complaint regarding force occurred just 0.06% of the total police contacts in the city. Conversely, citizens commended their police department approximately 1% of the time. And then to round it out, the other internal responsibilities that IA has in the department is overseeing intentional firearm discharges, which in 2014 we in fact had 5 of those. All 5 involved dispatching of injured animals, deer, etc. And so the following audits and inventories were also completed in 2014. The property and evidence facility was audited. The use of force analysis was completed. A pursuit analysis was completed. This IA investigation summary was completed. Post-training was audited, and the fleet inventory was completed. So in summary, during 2014, there was a total of 8 formal complaint investigations. 5 were the result of citizen-initiated complaints, and 3 were initiated internally by the police department. Of the 8 total complaints investigated as internal affairs investigations, 6 were sustained and 2 were unfounded. There were 18 additional administrative reviews of operational events, including uses of force, vehicle pursuits, and intentional firearms discharges. These are standard reviews to ensure compliance with department policies and to meet required reporting mandates. The Placerville Police Department completed the 2014 annual report of citizen complaints against peace officers to the State of California Department of Justice, indicating the number of citizen complaints reported as non-criminal, criminal felony, and criminal misdemeanor, number unfounded, and number sustained based on data extracted from this report. So, like I said in the beginning, I think a lot of times we get busy and we talk about the crime stats, et cetera. I think it's important to periodically report on the internal statistics, and your department is very transparent, does meet the required reporting to the state and Department of Justice, and we'll always disclose as much as we can within the law. And so with that, I'll close it up, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Any questions for anyone on council?
Comment?
Questions, comments?
Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to say, Chief, I really appreciate this report, and it's proof of the excellent service our city is getting. You know, this helps us really realize that for a city our size, what a benefit it is to have our own police department that is serving our community in such an amazing way. I mean, those statistics that have, you know, over 16,000 calls for service, to have, you know, so few challenges and is just remarkable. So my hat's off to you and our entire law enforcement and our citizens. We're very grateful and very lucky to have such an amazing force protecting our city.
Thank you. John?
I had a question, but you answered it, and that is what generates an internal complaint, but you actually covered that, so thank you very much. And I realize that if you are the victim of a crime, that's one crime too many. And so I'm always very careful when I say this, but I grew up in a very small town, much smaller than this one, in fact. This is the safest place I have ever lived in my life. It may be the safest place I've ever actually been in my life, and I think that that is something worth noting. All the wonderful attributes of this community. To me, one of the more significant one is it is a very safe place to be. So anyway. And a lot of it has to do with the people in it. In fact, it has mostly to do with that, but also the very fine law enforcement that we have and all of those things. Anyway.
Thank you. Tricia? Carol? Well, I too want to commend you. This is certainly a beautiful report, and you are to be congratulated.
Very much
Okay, I have one more item under announcements. I want to acknowledge the passing of a former city council person, Robert Bob, they called him Boomer Springer, who passed away on March 16th. Besides being a past Placerville City Council member. Bob was past commander in the American Legion Post 119. He was a former volunteer fire department member, and from a family that's been here forever. And he just gave so much to our community, and I wanted to acknowledge his passing. Okay, closed session report, we do not have one. Adoption of the agenda.
I'll move the agenda.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ceremonial matters, we have none scheduled. Okay, now we come to public comment. Brief, non-agenda items. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the council on any matter not on the agenda, and that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. State law prohibits the council from acting on items not listed on the agenda except by special action of the City Council under specified circumstances. The mayor reserves the right to limit the speaker's time to 3 minutes. The mayor will recognize you, and when you come to the microphone, please state your name for the record. You are not allowed to make personal attacks on individuals or make comments which are slanderous or which may invade an individual's personal privacy. Please give any written material presented at the meeting to the city clerk for public record. And once more, I will call your attention to our new time clock, which our city clerk will set at the beginning. Okay, at this time, would I ask if anyone would like to come. Oh, first of all, I'm going to ask if we have any written communication.
None.
Okay, so now I will ask anyone from the audience if they would like to come forth.
Hello, my name is Heidi Meyerhofer, and I'm the owner of the Painted Owl on Main Street.
I'm sorry, you're the owner of what?
The Painted Owl.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you.
I'm here tonight to talk of my serious concern over the potential loss of the courthouse functions on Main Street. Downtown businesses benefit significantly from the functioning of the El Dorado County Courthouse. Staff and visitors eat at local restaurants, shop local businesses on their breaks, and become familiar with the unique and interesting offerings of our small business community. I have been in business for just over 2 years, and I hear regularly from the visitors to my store who are wearing their juror badges just how impressed they are with our downtown. They say that they are previously unaware of how interesting it was and that they will definitely be back when they have more time. The loss of the courthouse would also likely cause the loss of the district attorney's office and the staff there, as well as the public defender's office and staff, additionally creating the loss of business to local restaurants primarily, but also our local shops. Our downtown has a unique small town feel that I think many of you have already expressed this evening. It can't be easily assessed or evaluated or quantified, but it is quite palpable to the visitors and locals alike. The courthouse, sitting proudly at the top of Main Street, contributes greatly to this feel, and the loss of operations there, even if the building is maintained and repurposed, will change this feeling of our historic town forever. It is my understanding that the Judicial Council is required under the California Trial Court Facilities Standards of 2006 to consider how moving a functioning courthouse would impact the economic, social, and cultural life of the community in which it is functioning before making its decision to move it. I'm wondering if the city made this case on our behalf. If not, it's not too late. I urge the council to do this immediately before the final draft EIR is certified. I know that I'm coming to this conversation late, and I'm wondering why that is. I'm a person who is daily involved in activities on Main Street, serving on the board of the Downtown Association. Why is it that I learned of this potential loss of the courthouse at a January PDA meeting, over a month after the period for public comment had passed? I understand it was published in the Mountain Democrat, but that's not the only way, that's not an efficient way to notify people. Businesses applying for liquor licenses have to put them proudly and loudly on their walls. Why was this not done?
We need to.
All right, I know, I see the time. Just let me finish. I feel extremely let down by all of you. You eat, sleep, and live this business. I eat, sleep, and live my business. It's going to take a little more than an article in the Mountain Democrat to catch my attention, and I feel it is incumbent upon you to make that effort. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Rich. I too just found out that the only notice besides, I guess, the Mountain Democrat about public response time was found in the library desk. I guess there was a flyer. Other than that, I mean, Heidi makes a great point. How many jurors come down to Main Street every day because they're out of town? They county residents who come to our town get to see it, whether they buy something right then and there. Not as big of a deal as how impressed they are, and then they come back with their families on the weekends. I am also excited that we're starting a merchant coalition to be able to respond to these type of issues. And, you know, we're busy. We have, you know, a lot of us work 60, 70 hours a week in our business. We don't have time to, you know, read the Mountain Democrat or go to the library and go through the files to find out. It seems like, you know, there's a move to like pull the wool over people's eyes. There's not really been, you know, a public stand, like a public announcement saying, hey, what do you guys think about moving the courthouse? The good news is there's a state judge, I guess, in 3 days that's supposed to make a decision on alternative 1 or alternative 2. Alternative 2 seems cheaper for the state. That's where we all pay our taxes. So if it's cheaper and it keeps lots of new potential business customers flowing through our Main Street, you know, by having, you know, by building the smaller courthouse over by the jail and revamping this one and keeping it here, you know, I would like to see that you guys at least send a letter on behalf of the merchants. And if you want us to get more signatures and more names of merchants that would want you to write the letter, you know, let us know how we can do that, because that's what we want to do. We want to all speak up and say it does affect our business, you know, on the everyday and the long term, and we don't see any reason why we should move it, pay more money, have the state pay more money, and most importantly, we all feel like we got shysted by not being properly notified. PDA a month after we were supposed to be given time to respond. It doesn't make any sense. So can I ask you, Mayor, why were we not given any more notification, you know, to respond, and, you know, except for the PDA a month after, and then, you know, a flyer somewhere buried in the library, and the Mountain Democrat, which a lot of us young business owners, we don't even read the newspaper. We do the social media thing.
Okay, I'm taking public comment right now, and we'll answer your questions later. So,
Go ahead.
I said I will answer your questions later.
Oh, like after we're all done talking?
After I get through taking public comment.
Okay, great. So we'll be waiting to hear why we weren't given
Thank you.
notification. Thank you.
Sue Rodman, Placerville, resident and member of the Measure H Committee, and I would like to say on behalf of the Measure H Committee, thank you very much for the really nice big signs that say your Measure H dollars at work down on Main Street where we're working on the water system. I think that that's it gives the citizens who are paying the tax for Measure H the chance to know where their dollars are being spent. Because when I go to Raley's and everybody knows that I'm on the Measure H committee, they say, so what are you using our money for? When are we going to see anything? So having that sign down there is really a great thing.
Thank you, Sue.
Hi, Sue Taylor. I've been kind of following the courthouse issue, and I think the last mention of it was around 2012. And I was actually the one that happened to be at the library looking for something else, and I found the draft EIR for the courthouse project with the statements or responses. This is really over the head of most people, what you have to do to comment or to address or deal with. And, you know, historically, I've been involved in this issue since probably, I know the time's over there. Did we reset it?
I think we're having a little bit of trouble here
Okay.
with our clock, so go ahead.
Okay, there we go. I'll wait.
Go ahead, Sue.
And I'd like to speak for Sabre County, so that actually, I've already started. So, I had concerns with this, and knowing what it takes to write comments, I submitted comments to the state. And in researching this, I realized that they had listed an alternative too, where they could build a 2-room courthouse and retain the one on Main Street, which would be an environmentally superior project. And I thought that would solve all the problems. And you know, the past. Anyway, the past history that we've had, I've never thought that the city really cared about retaining the function of the courthouse. And after the time for comments was ended, I heard Wendy at several different meetings saying, we talked to the state and we wanted to retain it. I don't know if that's exactly what was said or the way it was said, but I question, then why has the city not written a letter or something to the state and say, officially, we would like to retain the function of the courthouse? It's really going to be, we all know it's going to be economically detrimental to downtown to lose that function. You're going to have a huge empty building. You know how hard it is for government agencies to deal with buildings, and the county owns the building. Once this is over with, they send it back. It's going to go to the county. The Board of Supervisors have the jurisdiction for that, and we were just told that by a prior supervisor just a few days ago, reminding us that that is what the deal is. The county has not been good stewards over historical buildings. They will probably sell it after it sits there for a really long time, and it's going to change a lot of the culture of Placerville. And it's just really scary. There's merchants here that have just gotten word. It's scary for them to come and speak before the council. It's hard for them to know what words they need to say before the council. But there is a lot of stress on Main Street about what's going to happen to the future of this city. And I don't feel that we have advocates that we need for Main Street. There's a lot of, it almost feels predatory of the actions that are happening on Main Street. And when we try to voice our issues or situations of the things that are happening there, I feel ignored. I have to step back. I feel a lot of assistance with what's happened with our building, and I have to give a lot of you credit for the assistance that you've helped us in restoring our building. But on other issues on Main Street, it would be nice to feel like we were all working together in an advocacy to retain what we have. You talked about two different things. Retaining, people love this place. They love the safety, they love the look, they love the feel. But then you talk about wanting to change it. And
Sue, you want to wind it down or wind it up?
Sure, thank you. So I would just, I think mainly what the merchants and the public would like to see from the city, the court has a time right now. I don't know what their time frame is. I've called 4 different people and haven't got an answer back. But right now they have the opportunity to certify the things that were turned in. You know, there's still a body of people that listen to the people that comment to them. And it would be really wonderful if the city said, could you go to option 2, retain this historic courthouse function as it is, and build a smaller courthouse over by the jail, and it would be less impacting on everyone, the
Okay.
city, the county, and the state.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. I'm Nancy Duncan.
Just
I have
pull it down, pull the mic down a little bit. There you go.
I'm Nancy Duncan. I have the bookery, and I just want to say I think everybody knows that losing the courthouse would be a blow to us economically downtown, and we are your downtown center. We are your main street. We're your revenue, and we're all of us that sell product, you know, not restaurants, are all swimming upstream against the internet as it is. So we would really like to have your support to try to keep this downtown the way it is and functioning with the courthouse. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Good evening, Mayor Borelli and members of the council. I actually didn't come to talk about the courthouse, but what I wanted to talk about kind of fits in. First of all, I wanted to say I was surprised under announcements that it wasn't announced that the Planning Commission applications are still being taken until March 31st, so that the public on TV and in the audience would know. And then I wanted to thank you for the Mayor's State of the City address. It was very informative, and I hope it'll go on the city's homepage. I was glad to hear about the 2 water conservation grants for repair and replacement of the sewer and water lines, and also that the website is being updated. But what I came to talk about is information out to the public. As I was driving around last week, I saw work being done on the trails in 2 places. And it just seems like there's a lot of projects going on. And what I would like to encourage the city to do is to go back to doing a newsletter every month in the water bill. The website, I actually went on the website and looked for something and found out about all of the improvements to downtown, the garbage cans, the benches, all that. I totally missed that. And I try to read and look and find things. So once the website is updated, I think it'll be more useful. But the city's Facebook page could be very useful for getting the word out. But I would appreciate having a little summary about a lot of the different things that are happening in the city that are really important for everybody who lives here and works here to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Any other comments?
Hi, good evening. Mike Kobus, resident of Camino and Placerville business owner. I have to, one thing I just wanted to say, which I really wasn't sure about or aware of. I mean, I heard about the courthouse moving probably 5 years ago, okay? And I don't even really remember exactly how I heard about it, but I knew that it was in the works. But it seems to me that there's a lot of people out here that, for whatever reason, aren't being made aware of what is happening in the city, especially something as vital as and impactful as the courthouse moving. So I think it might be very, very wise and advantageous to try and figure out a way to be able to inform people besides just the Mountain Democrat, maybe in the water bill, I'm not sure, maybe on billboards or something like that, to make people aware of what's going on. Anyhow, I think that most of us would like to see the courthouse stay where it is, you know, but unfortunately it's not our decision to make. You know, the state has plans to relocate it, you know, over there by the jail, near, you know, west of town, and by the sheriff's office. It's rumored that the state will deed the courthouse either to the city or the county, or I guess maybe it already is with the county. I'm not quite sure on that. So, but what we as a city and the county, you know, the city and the county needs to work together, and I know you guys are working on that, but you need to figure out some way to replace the economic vitality that is the courthouse, because it is definitely going to be an impact on our wonderful small businesses in downtown Placerville. So that's what I got to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike.
Hi, name's Carl Hagan, former council member, for full disclosure. I would like to say that I've been aware of the courthouse considering relocation since they built the jail, which is in excess of 25 years ago. My involvement in the community is maybe more active than some business owners, but I've certainly made it a point to keep aware of what's going on. Some of the reasons that the state is considering the move is security. Several times the courts have been in a difficult situation, and not from threats and so forth, particularly family court, which is in Building C, which was designed not as a courthouse but as the planning department for the county. The difficulty is there, they don't like to discourage people from coming into a public building and going in to get plans or plan checks and what have you, or to go downstairs in the elections department to get to the traffic court and or the other court. But they have had cases where individuals have made threats against them, and then people get in further than they should and before they're arrested. So from a safety standpoint, the same thing as in the old courthouse. They have one holding cell, I believe, in the Superior Courthouse. I've been in meetings behind the jail in a jury room in regards to a nonprofit operation. And behind us, one of the deputies told me later, he says, "I'm sure glad nothing happened back there because those walls are only paper thin." He says, so if there's somebody that got a hold of somebody's gun or something, you might not have made it out of that meeting. So again, the security for the public at large, the jurors, and the prisoners and our officers and the court employees is key, one of the key reasons they're moving it. ADA is another huge issue with the courthouse downtown. Many of you might remember also asbestos problems we've had with that courthouse. So there's been a number of issues with the courthouse. I think that AOC is making that decision. This city council, for the time that I was on it, was having input on an irregular basis with the county and with the AOC. Most recently with the AOC as far as hitting them up, if you will, for the cost of moving out of town. The merchants are kind of funny. It takes me back to when I first came on this council 10 years ago. And one of the things that the merchants were complaining about was the jurors using all the parking spots in town. And so we had to we did put in a timed parking limit and leased parking. And we set up a system of jury parking out at the train station, the old station. So anyway, that's one of the things, how things change. You know, oh, we don't want them to take all the parking. Well, they're jurors, they're just like the regular public, just like the employees who use it. So believe me, most of the city councilmen actually have the best interest of most of us, of our businesses at heart. I don't think that any one of those council members that are sitting there now, or any of us that in my tenure didn't think about how it affected this city and how it affects business. We are very cognizant of that. This is where the income comes for this city. So to indicate that that the merchants aren't being heard or aren't being thought of is nuts. What we're
Thank
doing
you, Mr. Hagan.
600,000 on Main Street right now.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Pat Blackwell, and I own Sierra Western Wear at the corner of Main Street in Sacramento. I don't have any formal prepared remarks. Mine is more of an emotional nature. I moved up here in 2000, and I traveled the West Coast many years as an apparel sales rep, and saw many little towns, and I sort of invested my retirement future in Placerville. I own 2 buildings on historic Main Street. I've spent a lot of my money, my retirement money, refurbishing these buildings. I recently painted my building at my own expense because it wasn't included in the free painting. One building was. And I also had the mural restored. Historically, I was attracted to this town because of its great history. I think many people that come here are attracted to it for that reason, besides the obvious beauty of the area and Apple Hill and the wineries and Tahoe and all that. And I haven't heard anything about this. Years ago, a realtor told me they were going to move the courthouse, and it was a done deal. You know, it's like a back room, it's done, you know, it's just a matter of when. So kind of pains me to realize that from what I've heard, it doesn't sound like the merchants, who I don't think are greedy and care that much about jurors parking. I mean, it's our livelihood. It's our life, you know, and I would be very pleased if more was taken into account. The option 2 sounds great to me, but I don't know much about it. So I don't know what's going to happen from here, but I just simply wanted to tell you how I feel about it, and I hope for a good result. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Celia Lux, and I'm the other half of the Bookery ownership. And I don't have a lot prepared. I'm taking notes as we go. Alternative 2 seems like a kind of a best of both worlds from what I've read of it and heard about it. My major concern has been, as Mr. Hagan says, you know, we've been talking about this for 25 years now. It's old news. Nobody even takes it seriously anymore because it is old news, because we've heard the sky is falling for 25 years. We don't believe it anymore. So when we find out in January that the environmental impact report public comment period just ended. Sorry, guys. Sorry you didn't know. That bothers me. I would have appreciated the opportunity to make a comment. Most anybody who knows me knows that I have an opinion more often than perhaps anybody wants to hear. But I liked in Mayor Borelli's speech earlier today, you mentioned preserving our unique historical past. The courthouse is an element of that. A vital living downtown is part of that. We could end up downtown Main Street being nothing but a bunch of cutesy boutiques that don't serve our community anymore, that only serve the tourist community. And I've always said that our livelihood at the Bookery is about 40-60, depending on whether you're in the summer or the winter. In the wintertime, the guys are going up and they're skiing, and 60% of my business is local folks. And in the summertime, the local folks are working in the yard, and 60% of my business is from tourism. But that 60-40 split means that, you know, about half the time I'm serving the local community. We turn our tax dollars over to the state and to our community. We support the high schools and the theater and the baseball team and the basketball team and the dogs on Main Street and so many, many things that a living, vibrant community, it's essential. So as the city knows, you folks know, we have a PDA, a downtown association. When something comes like this, it would be real nice if somebody said, yoo-hoo, this is a real big deal and it's happening soon and there isn't a comment period, and if you want to comment, this is the time to do it.
Sheila, you want to bring it to a close?
Okay. So I would request that the city back us with helping to reopen comment period, if that is at all possible. It would be greatly, greatly appreciated, no matter where you stand on the issue. We appreciate being heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Kirk Smith, Placerville. I appreciated listening to Carl.
You want to lift the mic up just a little? There you go.
I appreciated listening to Carl, I always do, particularly when he's talking about the history of civic activities. He has an encyclopedic knowledge. And the issues he raised regarding this building are all appropriate. But when you look at the environmental impact report, some 250 pages or whatever, none of those things and how to ameliorate them are addressed. When it comes to the access for the wheelchair accessibility, besides going in the back way, and up at, and for prisoners to be able to get access, you add an elevator, 2 of them. For ADA compliance on one building, I've had to look at that, and the cost is $80,000. When it comes to asbestos, the kind of tile up here, you'll note that this kind of suspended tile for ceilings is in the courthouse. Why? Because they didn't have air conditioning in 1911. So when they made revisions to make it earthquake-proof in the 1970s, they lowered the ceiling. If you want to see what it looked like before, there are lots of illustrations where the walls, unlike the present ambiance of a Greyhound bus depot, was solid marble. So the things I'm going to be interested in finding out is what did you know and when did you know it? When someone said they saw an article in the Mountain Democrat, I confess I actually read it twice. I read it online and read it in. I don't know if it's referring to an actual article or a legal notice. I don't know how many people read legal notices, but I heard about the legal notice for the last one that expired on March 6th. It's not mentioned on the city's website. The city's website tells you about this. It does not tell you that you can submit comments to the Office of Judicial Council. I don't know if you received notices about the Judicial Council seeking public comment, and if so, what was done. I would not have known but for somebody actually all but stumbling on it at the courthouse. So I think there has to be a better way. Our family received a notice when it came to a liquor license. We received one by law every time the zoning commission, the commission, planning commission, looks at a project that's 500 feet from where we are. But now, I believe the number of signatures on the petition circulated by merchants is now 50. 50 signatures plus of merchants downtown signing a petition is extraordinary. These are busy people who, as you've heard, spend 60, 70 hours a week to go around door to door and pass the word that we would hope come from elected officers. So all you were asked and are being asked in the petition is one simple thing related to democracy. Please, any of you, you can't collectively, no, Brown Act, you can't decide tonight, but any one of you can just write a letter to the Judicial Council and in fair play, just say, reopen the public comment period. Because it's shameful, certainly not something any of us want to be proud of, that the public, like merchants, didn't find out about it until after it closes.
Okay,
and I only found out about it because of that. Pardon?
Your time's up.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Jackie No, City of Placerville. I would hope that you wouldn't reopen public comment. You know, we all have to pay attention, and if you had to send out a special letter to everybody who wants a special letter, you'd never get any business done. You know, it is our responsibility to pay attention, to read agendas, and to engage. Otherwise, we're never getting anything done in this city. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie.
Evelyn Veerkamp, Placerville. I have two very different comments to make, both brief. The first one, I would like council to clarify who will have ownership of this building, or who has ownership of the building. We've heard two different stories. One is that the county will own it, and the other is that the state will own it. And I'm sure that collectively, City Council must have the answer to where the ownership will fall. That's the first thing. The second thing, very differently, is I would like to offer a citizen commendation to Chief Heller and his staff. It's quite wonderful seeing the way the crime statistics are falling. I remember back in redevelopment days when our city was blighted by crime, and that was one of the reasons for redevelopment. So thank you for helping us to get it back to the state in which John Clarici has so clearly and correctly referenced our safe city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Evelyn.
Easy with that, Mrs. Zito. Oh, I got extra seconds. Good evening, City Council.
Apparently,
She saw you coming.
Thank
we're
you.
going to have to count up rather than
Not
down.
that-
It won't reset
My
down.
wife would argue that I talk too much. I don't know if it's your fault or not, but it's fallen on your feet this evening, and I certainly can understand both sides of what I see are two issues here. We've heard Sue Taylor mention that she first realized this project existed in 2012, and also recently dug it up in the library. There's also been very clear advertisements for a blue ribbon committee to work with this process as this goes forward. But I've also can very much understand the important impact that the existing courthouse operation presents to all the merchants, most of whom I regularly try and patronize. The importance to them is those annoying jurors when they're parking in the correct spot, and I totally get that. Not having been privy to the last 2 years and what information the state may or may not have provided to this city council, I don't know where I should throw the blame necessarily. And perhaps you'll be encouraged to help clarify that, because I think the merchants have brought up a very honest concern. I can agree with some of the other speakers, however, that they are their businesses and they should be paying PDA to be their watchdog for them, to make sure that these kinds of surprises aren't coming to them. But the ideal option would be, at least for the merchants to know, that the city council went forward and said, hey state, hey court, we would really prefer for you to maintain two courthouses, a new one and an old one. Do whatever is necessary to make the old one an operational and safe part of this community, and then build whatever facility is necessary on your new site. Then allow the state to respond to that, and if the state responds as I suspect they are, then all of these merchants can then address their concerns either at Sacramento or in San Francisco, where these state court agencies are actually headquartered. But right now, I don't see where we've actually done that as a city to give the merchants the opportunity to make sure that that message, is being clearly addressed to them, and that we really do value our courthouse, have this concern, and only after a no option or a no from them would we have to then accept having the courthouse closed and having a new one over by the jail, which, as Carl mentioned, I was aware of 25 years ago. They put that building there because the jail was, or the courthouse was always going to go next to it. Right. So thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, Mark. Anyone else care to come forward and comment? Seeing no one, I'll bring it back to council at this time. Mr. Morris, I'm going to ask you to address some of the items that were asked of us and maybe tell a story.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I will attempt to answer some of the questions. I want to start with one that may not give you a good answer, but it's one that I can address, and that was, I believe it was Evelyn Veerkamp asked who owns the courthouse building. I will tell you in all the meetings I've been at, that is still, there's some disagreement on that. History is that back in early 2000, the state passed a law that all courts became part of the state, under the jurisdiction of the state, so county courts ceased to exist, and they were then under the jurisdiction of the state. At that time, the law also required that all courthouses were supposed to be deeded over to the state. In 2009, El Dorado County attempted to deed the courthouse over to the state. However, and I've seen the letter, the state wrote a letter back to the county saying due to the condition of the courthouse and their plans to rebuild the courthouse, they were refusing to take possession of it. So in those discussions, it comes down to they were supposed to do it, however, the state refused to take it. So those discussions are now going on in terms of if and when a new courthouse were built, in terms of trading for land and et cetera, does the state actually have possession of that courthouse? So that may not be a complete answer for you because there's still some confusion. If you look on title, the county owns it. But according to that law, they were supposed to transfer it to state, which they attempted to do. So that's the best answer I can give to that question.
I don't see how you could be any more clear. I mean,
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, it's not.
I mean, in
the
other
answer
words,
is I don't know
a
who
title
owns
is a
it.
title, and
Yeah.
if it's in the county's name,
Sure.
it's their
Sure.
courthouse.
I'm going to just mention a couple of things here, and I'm going to try to go quickly because we still have a lot to go through on our agenda tonight. There was a lot of publicity. I will, you can look at me, council. It was not the council's fault that it was not advertised on our website. It should have been. That's where we try to get things up. I will admit, I remember when it came out. I went to the site because they gave us a link to the site at the state to put the site up to where the draft EIR was located. I still remember the day. I went to the site to look for it, found the site, clicked on the link, and it was not working. The link was not working that day when it was supposed to be up. And so I delayed putting it up at that time. When it did come out, I failed. I didn't get it back up, so I'll take the blame for that. I will also state, however, that there was a lot of publicity going on about it. I know that at least 2 of the people who spoke tonight did provide comments, who spoke to the fact that it was not advertised well, did provide comments on the draft EIR, and their comments are included in there. I would also like to state, I've been here in the city about 4.5 years now. I have been quite regularly attending meetings with staff of the county during that time, and I will state that on more than one occasion, I have asked the question back to when I first got here, whether or not the courthouse could continue downtown. And as recently as last week, I asked that question again to representatives of the Judicial Council who I spoke to. And the comment back to me was very emphatically that due to security issues, ADA issues, and parking issues, that was not in the plan that courthouse would be used in the future. It wasn't, well, maybe it could be that. It was emphatically that the state would not use that building at the court as a courthouse in the future. So that's just, I know that there was a lot that went on prior to me coming. I don't know what that was, and I don't know what happened then because obviously I was not there to be part of that. The state has jurisdiction of the court, and it's ultimately their decision what happens to it. I will not disagree with you that input could be provided for the county by the city, excuse me. As Mr. Acuna noted, if we decided to send a letter, we could do that. I will state that my fear is also one of the considerations since I've been here, in fact, has been whether or not the courthouse would even remain in Placerville. There was another site on, I believe, off Ponderosa Road, which is being considered. I also heard discussions about whether or not it even had to stay in El Dorado County. There was no requirement for that. There was talks about opening a courthouse in Rancho Cordova, which would serve El Dorado County. We are currently in line for funding for the new courthouse. I feel fairly strongly that if they were to stop that, it may be years before they would get funding again. And I feel fairly confident in stating that I believe they would look at ways to either temporarily move the courthouse to a new location due to the condition of this courthouse, or find a way to start up to rebuild again. But I think they are quite intent that that courthouse is not going to meet their needs and that they are going to look for something else, not only just on a partial use basis, but on a total basis. With that, I will state that, you know, we've been very active in the court, with the court. I want to give Councilmember Thomas credit for requesting that the state help us in looking at repurposing and finding out what the impact of the courthouse would be in moving and how we can mitigate that impact going forward. And Councilmember Thomas has requested that, and the court has agreed to help us with that. And some of you may have seen there's a request for proposals out right now for firms to help us with that with that process. Last thing I will note is we should have done this all under announcements also, but the Blue Ribbon Committee is open for those who may be interested in being on that committee. We're taking applications. Our city clerk, Susan Zito, is taking those. I thought we would be inundated with applications. However, for our 10-person committee, which we hope to get, we only have 6 applications in right now. So if you have an interest in what happens there, including, talking about, to the state about why did they have to move, that may be a discussion that comes up at that meeting. I would really encourage you to fill out an application to get it in. Again, we determined that we were going to have a 10-person committee. We currently have 6 applications, and the application period closes on Friday. We close our office at 3 o'clock, so Friday at 3 o'clock will be the deadline for that. So,
Cleve, could you
yes,
also elaborate on how the county has, that we are doing, we're cooperating with the county, that they realize as well as we do the potential of losing that courthouse and as it now functions downtown. The Blue Ribbon Commission, in case you don't understand, is something that's going to be appointed. I believe the county's going to appoint 10 members. Is that?
We're going to meet jointly with the county.
Oh, that's
to
okay.
appoint them.
We're going to meet jointly and go over the applications, and 10 folks are going to be chosen to be on this Blue Ribbon Committee, which will address everything like you folks have been coming forth tonight. They're going to hold meetings. They're going to explore every possibility of what the future of the current courthouse is. I want to say, it just surprises me so when I hear that nobody, or that some people weren't aware of this, because I know we've been talking about it at council meetings for at least the last 2 or 3 years, and we have expressed our concern of losing that courthouse. We've expressed how we know it's going to impact the economy of downtown Placerville. And for that reason, we want to make sure that when this happens, this transfer, and as Mr. Morris just told you, we've been pretty much assured that that courthouse is going to move. And I never heard about this second option. I have to be quite honest with you, and I don't even know if that is one to be considered. But tonight I'm going to tell you that our concern is losing the economic impact that will happen when that courthouse closes, because as many of you have said, probably to follow suit would be the DA's office. I don't know that for sure. Nobody's told me that, but I'm just assuming. And there's 2 buildings involved there. So we need to be just really cognizant, and that's what this Blue Ribbon Committee is all about. There have been a lot of things that have been proposed for that courthouse, if and when it were to close. For instance, a museum, a performing arts or something. But whatever happens, it has to be of equal economic value of whatever is decided. So I'm going to say I'm sorry to those folks who say that they didn't know about this, because like I say, I've been talking about it incessantly for a long time. I feel as though we all have as a council, and I don't know what else to say except that, as Mr. Morris indicated, this commission is taking, we have applications. If you're interested in being a member of it, I invite you to, can they do it over the phone, Susan, or do they need to come down?
Actually, there's hard copies available at City Hall at the 4th floor in my office, and the application is also available on the city's website. On the home page, there's a link about the Blue Ribbon Committee. You can click on the application there and just drop them off to my office in the administration office on 4th floor City Hall by Friday at 3. Thank you.
Thank you. So again, I need to stress that to have a couple of you indicated that you felt as though that the city council didn't care it's the furthest thing from the truth, because we do care we would really be remiss if we were a city council that didn't realize the impact of this. And we've been talking about it and talking about it and talking about it and fighting for to do what's right and to find out what and see what everybody wants to do. But anyway, onward and upward. We need to take care of this, and hopefully the Blue Ribbon Commission will help us in this manner. So, yes, Carol.
Thank you. This might be a question for City Attorney, and that has to do with what Mr. Smith asked, which was, wouldn't the requirements be the same for the state to have to notify any property owner within 500 feet of this move?
That I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I mean, the publication or the publication of the notice is what complies with CEQA law with respect to the comment on the EIR. So in the context of the comments on the EIR, that notice that it's there available for comment and review is something that is part of the Public Resources Code dealing with what notice you have to give on with respect to the comment period. But I don't believe there's a 500-foot rule with respect to that.
Is that
That's
just
more
a
of a
courtesy?
planning and zoning.
Oh, planning and zoning.
Yeah, so if you have a planning issue, a piece of property that's coming in for a variance or a rezone, then all properties within 500 feet of that are to be specifically notified. There's also publication requirements as well. But with respect to the notice that a EIR is a draft EIR is available for comment, it's a different rule, different sort of publication requirements.
Real quick on, and then John, does it have anything to do with the fact that that courthouse belongs to the county? I mean, in other words, the neighboring community?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. John?
You know,
Proponent is the state of California. The project proponent is the state of California. I have worked on a lot of environmental documents in my life. Typically, there's not a 500. There's a 500-foot rule, as was mentioned, around planning and those kinds of things. But typically, what will happen is there is notification sent, usually, even on state projects, to some surrounding area. They try to do that. They also do communications through old-fashioned things like the newspaper and whatnot, and then they try, depending on who's advising them, they try to go out and hit the major groups, presumably the chambers of commerce. It depends on the project, obviously. So there's a lot of that. Unless this is a different kind of CEQA document, there actually should be somewhere some sort of a record of all of their efforts to provide public outreach. So you can actually go into the document and see what the state of California did, who they talked to, and when and how, and which meetings they had, and where they were held, and all those good things. So rather than speculating on who talked to whom when, you can actually look and see.
Anybody else? Comments? Okay, with that, we will carry on. Move to the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion by roll call vote unless any member of the council wishes to remove an item for discussion. The reading of the full text of all resolutions will be waived unless a council member requests otherwise.
Move for approval.
I'll second, but I'd like to make a comment on an item.
Okay.
All right. I'd just like to comment that, I know we all appreciate the incumbents of Peak and Measure H and Community Pride have sought reappointments, and we appreciate that we're adding new folks to the mix, including Dolly Wager and Mickey Kaiserman of Peak and Craig Zangari of Community Pride. We really appreciate that everyone's stepping up to the plate to serve our city, and I find it very unfortunate that no one was interested in serving on the Historical Advisory Committee, and we're having to close it. So.
Thank you, Wendy. I'm glad you brought that forth. Okay, this time I have a motion and a second to approve.
To get comments from the public.
I'm sorry. I need to ask if there's anyone in the public would like to come forth and comment on any of the items on the consent calendar.
I'd like to, Sue Rodman, Placerville, Measure H. I'd like to say I'm very grateful that the people on the Measure H committee whose terms were up decided they want to stick with it, and I'm really glad to see that come into the mix here. And I'd really like to congratulate our police chief on grabbing that electric motorcycle while it was available.
Thank you, Sue. Any other comments tonight on the consent calendar? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council. I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Roll call.
You should write that roll call.
Just for
I got a
clarification,
note up here that tells me to ask the public. It's like, okay,
the motion was made by,
Carol.
I thought so, I have a post here. Okay. Mayor Borelli,
Aye.
Councilmember Clarici,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Patton.
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilkins.
Aye.
Okay. Number 10, ordinances, entitlement extensions, zone change. Mr. Rivas, or is, who's going to take this? Is it up here? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Just to give a little background on this item, approved site plan reviews, conditional use permits, and variances typically contain conditions of approval stipulating what actions that the applicant must take in order that the use or construction can be carried on in accordance with that permit. Per the code, site plan reviews, variances, and site plan reviews, conditional use permits have an 18-month period granting these entitlements. Is the time that they have to obtain the required building permits to improve the site or engage in the activity. Following the Great Recession back in 07-08, the City Council responded to the economic downturn by granting automatic time extensions for valid unexpired projects. Its first response was granting a 12-month extension that became effective back in April of 2009. 1 year later, the council then extended all valid permit projects an additional 24 months, and that became effective on April 8th, 2010. And then subsequently, a third extension was granted by the council back in August 27th of 2013. That third extension granting 24-month extension. So the extension before you would be the fourth entitlement extension if granted by the council. The proposed ordinance would automatically extend for 24 months the life of existing entitlements for site plan reviews, variances, and conditional use permits that have not expired as of April 1st of 2015, but will expire before January 1st of 2016. No applications for the extension will be required of the property owner or the applicant. The draft ordinance would be retroactive to April 1st, 2015, but before January 1st, 2016, to include all those projects that would have expired during this calendar year, 2015. The proposed ordinance is retroactive because the ordinance would not take effect until 30 days following the second reading and adoption of the ordinance, which would be after April 1st of 2015. A list of those projects that would be affected by this ordinance are included in your staff report in attachment A. So with that, staff is recommending that the council find that this ordinance is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines, and then introduce the ordinance of the zoning code under ZC 2015-03 and waive its first reading. I'll be happy to answer any questions your council has at this time.
Any questions from council? Carol?
Thank you. Pierre, I had a question on the Fuel for Less on Main Street. Hasn't that already been rebranded to the ConocoPhillips? Or I mean to 76?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what your question was.
So on the Fuel for Less, in the attachment A, page 2, there's one of the extensions is for Fuel for Less to be rebranded to the 76 station,
Yes.
but I thought that was already done.
No, they still have not finalized their permit. Their permit was also to change their bays to retail, and they still haven't affected that. So we're still working with them. They have
I'm not
submitted.
talking about the Shell station. I'm talking about
76.
the 76 stations down by the liquor store, across from the skateboard shop.
Well, that one.
Corner of Rector Street.
It says 76.
Yeah, and they did the pole sign. The pole sign has a decorative face to it. Anyways, that was my question. It was regarding the Fuel for Less, was whether or not that hadn't already occurred. But you say it hasn't been finalized?
It has not been finalized. We're currently been going back and forth with their plans. Their plans are usually sent to Interwest, with the city contracted with, and so they have responded. Now we're reviewing their revised plans that they have submitted to us at this time.
Anyone else have any questions? Okay, at this time, I'm going to see if anyone from the public would like to come forth with questions or comments. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council.
I'd like to move staff's recommendation. I think it's great that things are turning around and things are potentially happening, and I'd like to give folks a chance to get things done.
I'll second that.
Yeah.
Does this a roll call? There's no money. There's some money, there could be money, I don't know. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, public hearings and unscheduled. Discussion items. Adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a project development agreement with Johnson Controls Incorporated to develop a water and energy efficiency project pursuant to California Government Code 4217. Mr. Morris.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This item is one we've been working on on a staff level for a few months now. I want to first state that we looked at a program similar to this a couple of years ago, and we actually, without bringing it to council at that time, we did an initial study a little bit on it to see if it might be feasible, and that did not at that time pan out, but it didn't go into a lot of detail what we did. We have been approached by Johnson Controls to look at this program again. We've been very impressed with their responses, their information they've provided, and their process that they go through. We also I personally talked to representatives in the city of Sanger. Thank you. I could see it, but I couldn't picture the city of Sanger, and they were extremely happy with the process that went on there and what they were able to achieve. And so we have made some calls and checked up on that and what they've done with them. I also know another person I talked to that is involved with their company, and I talked to them about the process and what happened, and they do a good job. Basically, I'm just going to just briefly introduce this and then turn it over to Brian Greenmeyer and Peter White, thank you, who will give you a short presentation and talk about this a little more and then open it up for some questions. But just briefly, what we'll be talking about tonight is a process where they will go through and do a feasibility study first to look at what opportunities we have. Based on that feasibility study, we'll come up with some goals and objectives we want to achieve, and come with a project that we feel could reach some of the solutions that we want to solve, and to become more energy efficient, and to hopefully be able to perhaps realize some cost savings for revenues that could then be put into other projects that we have been looking at, such as our roads, Old City Hall, maybe the police station, things like that. So, and if we go into that, then we would hopefully be able to achieve what we're trying to accomplish. And one important factor that Brian will talk about is that they guarantee the results. So if we do everything that they recommend and follow through, and those results aren't there, then basically I believe what he told me, they would cut us a check for what those results that don't get achieved. So and then the other thing, and Brian will expand on this more, but this first phase that we're talking about signing an agreement for, authorize the signature for tonight, is no cost to the city. However, if we authorize the second phase and go through that, and then at the end of the second phase decide not to go through with the formal project, then we would pay for what the cost was to do that second phase. So tonight's action to me is not as important as what would happen at the end of the first phase, the feasibility study, when we look at going to the second phase and the actual project. So with that, I want to turn the time over to Brian Greenmeyer, and he'll take it from there.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And I guess what I wanted to do is just briefly introduce
Could you move the mic over a little closer to
Sir.
there you go.
I'm not tall enough.
Well, no, it's just it was to the side and we
Okay.
couldn't hear you.
All right. Well, thank you again for inviting me to come out here. Again, my name is Brian Greenmeyer. I want to give you a little bit of background. I've been with Johnson Controls for over 20 years. I've done many of these projects. I've done, in the last 8 years, probably about 15 of these projects, 4 cities and district hospitals. So I'm very familiar with the process and working with the state of California requirements, working with local government. But again, as this first slide says, this is a business-driven solution for energy efficiency and infrastructure upgrades for the city of Placerville. And how this is done, we usually like to talk, oh shoot, hold on one second. There you go. Oh. How this is done, we like to sit down and talk about your goals and objectives and what is the city of Placerville looking like and the priorities. As you'll notice here, one of the things that we heard was street improvements, water main leaks, and protection of the historical resources that you guys have here. As we start to look into it to the next level, we really want to understand what the challenges and opportunities are looking like. And when you start to look at that, aging infrastructure is always on top of everyone's mind. Limited funding, which is always a challenge, especially as we're trying to recover, and as you guys have talked about it today. Water leaks is another big issue as we're starting to deal with some of the drought and some of the crises that were going on, and backlog of maintenance. And more importantly, I understand you guys are really looking at some street improvements. So I don't have a solution for that, but we might have a solution that might be able to help for that later on with some potential savings opportunities. We won't know until we get further into it, but we'll talk more about the process of when and how that might come up. But what I really want to do is talk about how we start off. We take a holistic approach. We're going to be looking at your infrastructure. We're going to be looking at your water, how you get the water right now. How does that work with your emergency response for fire? That plays a big key. As you're starting to see, there's a theme here. You take this big piece, you look at everything holistically, and now how can we do things a little differently than you've been operating it currently, or apply new technologies to these things? Again, looking at solar technologies, or some cities like to talk about wind power. Wind power wouldn't work here, but definitely PV might be an option here. The other thing is we look at this, we also like to talk about, and someone mentioned it earlier, about IT infrastructure. IT plays a big role in this as technology. So how do we apply that to your current infrastructure around water and energy savings? Now, how do we put all this together? Well, what this really is, a business-driven solution. I'm just going to read through this real quick, but basically performance contracting is the key here through the state of California 4217. Allows cities to fund energy efficiency upgrade projects in a budget neutral manner funded by savings. JCI takes the performance contract beyond the budget neutral baseline, enhances revenue for the city, positively impact the local economy and customize financial solutions, and minimizes the risk to the city. We'll talk about that here in a few minutes about some of the case studies. But what I want to, this thing's a little, one more, there we go. One of the things I wanted to point out here is if you look at the bar chart onto the right-hand side, you'll notice that your current utility spend to the right, you spend just under about $600 and some thousand a year currently. What we're wanting to do is reduce your utility spend, use the savings that you see on the right-hand side to directly pay for those improvements to the city that we'd be making. Meanwhile, you'd be continuing to pay the remaining bill that's in the green on the right-hand side. Before I move on, is that clear? Does anyone have any questions with that? Because this sometimes gets confusing, and I just want to make sure it's clear. Okay. So how do we go through this process? The next process there, you'll start to see. Again,
It's actually here. It's only slightly better.
yeah, I just wanted to be able to communicate here. This is really a two-step process, as Mr. Morris presented. The first step is a project development agreement that has the two-step. First one is the preliminary assessment, where we'll go through, we'll look at everything, and then come back from looking at from a budgetary perspective, using benchmark numbers and taking in your utility data and raw data that the city provides us, and coming back with a feasibility study. That feasibility will give us a go or no-go scenario. If it's no-go, we don't do anything, no cost to the city, but thank you very much for letting it take a look to see if there's anything to do. If there is something there, and it does hit the financial criteria or things that are of interest, then we go to the next stage. That's the detailed phase. That detailed phase comes back with 60% design drawings and engineering, comes back with firm fixed pricing, and lays out a very firm price of how this is going to be done and what does that mean to the city and what are the additional financial benefits as well as the other benefits that the city would be receiving. And then the third one below the line, which you guys can't see in the PowerPoint, but in the piece of paper you received, that is the implementation period. Once that implementation period starts, we go through, we install, we have validation, we have verification, and work very closely with the city. This is at the time after we're done, before the city approves it, they have to, or before we get final notification, we get a written notification from you that everything has been met per the construction. 6 months after that, we come back and we start to report on the operations. Are we achieving what we said we're going to do based upon the last 6 months of performance? By the time we get to the 12th month, we come back and we're trying to show that we're meeting the performance guarantee of the dollars that you're going to be achieving through the program of water and energy savings, that the goal was being met. If it wasn't, then we turn around and write you the difference for what it wasn't being met. So that's the process. As we look at the potential scope, thank you. I figured you were doing that. As we look at the potential scope, these are some of the items that we talked about with your staff. Water meter, solar, street lights, leak detection, wastewater treatment plant, maybe some energy efficiency opportunities may be able to use there. Historical building modernization, upgrade to the water distribution, and update the existing infrastructure. As I understand, you're looking at roofs, windows, HVAC, and some potential lighting as we pull this project together. There you go. So where have we done this? We've done this in a number of cities, but most recently, City of Sanger, which is one close and dear to my heart. I was put through a number of challenges through this, as you can imagine. This is right at the time after cities are trying to rebound and trying to redevelop themselves and come out of the very hard, I didn't hear the word depression, but there were definitely recessions that they were challenged with, and how could they do more and revitalize their city. What I want to show you here is the contract value was just a little north of $11 million. The annual savings that we were able to help them out was $407,000 a year. What I want to point out here is because of what we did and the direction we went, we brought in an excess savings above and beyond the debt service payment to be able to make this happen, an additional $105,000 a year to the city to their budget. That's huge. Now, the other thing I have to also add to it is down at the bottom, I want to talk about the project benefits. Not only are the city received $10 million over the next 20 years of excess cash, but there was no cost to the residents. 89% of the local labor lived in the city of Sanger. In the city, okay? They put hard restrictions, and it was validated by a third-party person that came in and validated. They made us meet a goal of 73. We exceeded that to 89% of using local labor. Now, I'm not saying I can do that here. I have a lot of work to do in front of me, but this is something that the city, as they got more involved, They talked to us. We had a number of work sessions, workshops, a number of special council meetings to go through this whole process, which I'm sure you guys will be invited to once we go and deer through this. Another case study that I want to talk about, it's very close to where I live. I live out in the Central Valley, is Tulare, California. This is another project I started back in 2006. Actually, Pete was also part of this project as well. It's a $14.6 million. It was 2 phases. Actually, that was the first phase. But the savings there is $5,969,000 that we did over a 15-year, and the additional savings that we did was just under $1 million a year on that phase 2. They liked it so well, the first one, 4 years later, they came back and asked me to do another one. So these are just another one that we did just to show you, City of Barstow. This is another one that, city, they're looking for infrastructure renewal. They did a lot of HVAC, roof replacements, some solar systems, but their total guarantee of their savings was just over $9 million in a 10-year term. And I can go on with the case studies. There's a whole bunch, but what I'd like to do is kind of jump to the last slide. Why Johnson Controls? We're always asked this, but we've been doing performance contracting for over 30 years. We have 725 active projects in place, and when we talk about that guarantee, and you'll learn more about that guarantee and what it means, but we have over $6 billion in active guarantees today, which we write less than 1% of that check, so we know how to do it. Okay? Any questions?
Council.
Pete, anything you would like to add?
I do. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming so far to join us tonight. We appreciate it. I do have several questions for you. I guess number one, the project agreement talks about benefits including negotiated utility rate reductions.
Mm-hmm.
So does that mean a potential for lowering our water sewer rates to our citizens? Can you just kind of explain what that means?
So lowering utility rates, when we're talking about that, is we have programs out there such as demand response where we can reduce the load shifting of your utility expenditures with your wastewater and water treatment, depending on the current operations. We're able to reduce that, and then you're able to, some cities will take that and pass that on or use that instead of having a rate increase in the future.
Okay, because our water sewer rates are a grave concern. They're high, and that's always an area that we're looking to help. Let's see. My next question is, let's see. Sorry about that. Okay, I love the fact that you're looking at local workers. That's always of grave concern always to us, as you know. So how do you arrive at a preferred vendor list? And for example, how do we support local vendors while ensuring that the public gets the most bang for their buck?
Sure. So as you, and this is one of our challenges that we're up against at the City of Sanger. As you know, this will be a government job, which we're going to have to follow Public Works. But what we've been doing is working very closely. We're bringing in the processes and the tools and using the local people as subcontractor tiers to the contractors that we bring in here who can carry that what do I want to call it, that responsibility.
Okay.
For public work.
So,
so it's a combination.
I was going to say, so it would really be a balance between some work that there might be certain expertise that we need.
Okay.
So we want to make sure that the people that do that kind of work are very experienced and qualified. There's some other work that is some rudimentary work that is something that we can actually train people to do real quickly. And a lot of that type of work we can get into from the local efforts. And then if there are qualified contractors that you like to use in terms of like electrical work or plumbing work, things of those, of that type, we can incorporate them. So we usually will work with you in terms of the subcontractors that you like to use around here. We might, if we need an additional skill set, we might recommend some other people that could come in. And then, of course, we go through a process of bidding the work out.
Okay, so it's a balance, great, all right. And I guess my last question has to do, love a clarification under the confidentiality agreement. It states that this is a confidential relationship and that lists what that includes. Includes knowledge, ideas, and current and planned activities. So can you explain what this limitation means? If it's knowledge and ideas and planned activities and yet we can't talk about it, I don't quite understand that.
I'll cover that one because I think it's a standard term and condition. For all practical purposes, you're a public entity, so there's
Right.
public information, and 95% of the work that we do is with public organizations. So most of what we do would be very, subject to FOIA and public laws. That really is more about any kind of proprietary software we might use or something of that nature. So your lawyer's right there, so we can work on that paragraph with you, but it's just a standard term and condition to cover, for example, if we have a software or something of that nature, we need to be able to protect that.
Okay, so it doesn't mean that always concerned about transparency to our public, and so that
We're not going to be accused of non-transparency.
backroom secret activities. So, all right, thank you. That's it, Madam Mayor.
Okay, Tricia, Carol, John? Well, my comment is that I'm impressed, and I have to tell you that I've been talking about, well, since Mr. Ribas, who is now part of our staff, served on the city council with me several years ago, and when we first built our sewer plant, Pierre and I decided that that would be an ideal spot for solar panels, and we've talked about the roof up here on our parking garage, and so none of this has ever come to fruition, and I am just a firm believer in all this technology, and I'm excited to find out, to do a report and find out whether we qualify or not, because I honestly think that it's part of the solution to some of our problems.
Good.
Thank you so much. Would anyone in the audience like to come forth and ask these gentlemen questions or make a comment on this matter?
Okay, Sue Rodman, one more time here. Stand still there. I heard $11 million project, a return over 10 to 15 to 20 years, and debt service. So what I want to know is if we do find out that this project could pay and we go ahead with it, we will put the city in considerable amount of debt. We're already in debt, $33 million for our sewer plant. So if we put the city that much further in debt, and would the savings that are generated pay for the project as well as for the debt service, so that we are not, in other words, do we stay at net zero cost-wise? Because we're going to have to pay, either we pay the current utility bills, then we get a savings, but are we still paying the current utility bills in order to pay off the project? Or does the savings from the project, because that's what it looked like to me from the chart, is that, okay, here we've got the blue block that is the savings for the project, but if we are also paying that back into to pay off the project, then we're really at net zero as far as making any gain financially.
Okay, Sue, I'll get an answer for you. One of the gentlemen will.
Sure, it's a great question, and it's a good one, quite frankly, because it's why this program is actually successful. So the way we structure this project is to be budget neutral, so the savings and enhanced revenue will pay for the cost of the program on an annual basis. One of the exciting things about it is that we're actually guaranteeing it to be budget neutral. So if anything in terms of excessive or excess savings occurs, that's money in your pocket, and that's where Brian had shared with a couple of cities that actually had positive cash flow. So that is actually additional money that will go to you to be used for whatever you choose to use it for. does that answer your question?
Not quite.
Oh, okay.
So the blue box still goes to pay off the project.
Exactly. So what we do.
We're still at the same budget level as we were, so we realize no savings until we have paid off the project.
That's exactly right. So in terms of the budget neutral that we're guaranteeing as worst case scenario, you're using the savings and the excess revenues to pay for the debt service. So the way this might be viewed differently from other investments that you might make is that this money is going out as an expense, and so basically instead of paying the utilities in terms of electricity, you're basically taking those savings and paying for the debt service. And the nice thing is that we guarantee that amount. That's a little bit what is nice for you as the council. You're in a situation that your risk is minimized because the savings is actually guaranteed. And if at the end of any given year we have a shortfall, we'll pay for the difference between what is to be saved in the guarantee and what is actually saved. So you're always made whole so that you can retire that debt service.
Sue, we can't, Sue, I need you to come forward to.
So at the end of whatever period that we're paying off debt service with our savings, do we own the improvements, and will they continue to be viable? Because even solar panels degrade over time and have to be replaced. This is something I know from working on these type of projects myself. So if the solar panel only lasts 20 years and it takes us 20 years to pay it off, we never quite get ahead, because then we're replacing what we already paid for.
Okay, I'll get you. I have Mr. White,
It's the other color.
whoever.
So that's another
I'm
great
sorry.
question, and I want to say from your perspective, the audience generally doesn't ask these type of questions. So those are good questions to understand this early on. Again, we're going to build this around the life cycle of the project. For a solar panel system, we're generally pushing it out to 25 years, and the inverters will be fully replaced after 25 years before we walk away. Let's just put it that way. There will be a reserve put in there to replace, and you're right. So to make sure the equipment's replenished.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the public care to come forward and with comments, questions? Seeing no one, I'll bring this back to the council. What is your pleasure?
I'll move staff's recommendation.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
By Councilmember Wilkins.
Yes.
Mayor Borelli.
Aye.
Councilmember Clarici.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Patton.
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilkins.
Aye.
Okay, at this time, it's for council reports and other agency meetings, but before we begin that, thank you, gentlemen. We'll look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank Tricia for taking my place at Transportation. I want to thank Wendy for taking my place at Transit. I want to thank Carol for emceeing the groundbreaking downtown, the shoveling the dirt for me.
She did an awesome job.
I heard you did. And okay, I've jumped the gun. We have, and I know, Mr. Warren, I'm going to go back to you, but I might as well, as long as I'm on this roll, I might as well.
Finish your thing. Go right ahead.
I have to blame all of this on this cold and this sickness that I've had. I think it's affected my brain. So anyway, okay, so before I ask then for other agency, council reports from other agency meetings, I will go back to Mr. Warren to acknowledge and file the fiscal year 2014-15 mid-year budget.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. The purpose of tonight's report is to answer two important questions. One, is the city operating within its means? And two, how is the city doing economically? Jumping right into the economic climate, we have your unemployment rates, which we have good news for you. The unemployment rates between January of 2014 to December 2014 dropped between 1.8 and 2.9%. Placerville's unemployment rate dropped from 12.3 to 9.4, and that's important when you consider in 2010 our unemployment rate was around 18%. So it's about half of what it was back in the depths of the Great Recession. Looking at your local real estate market volume, looking at the previous year compared to 2014, we had 6 months that had higher volume than the previous fiscal year. Total 4 homes more than the previous fiscal year. And the average price of the homes were actually higher 10 months out of the 12 months of for 2014. Now I'll hand it over to Steve Yule to talk about recreation program attendance.
Thank you, David. As Dave indicated, as the economy improves, so does our attendance in our recreation programs and services. This is just a brief snapshot of a particular period of time for our recreation programs, that being July to December. So some of the numbers are a little skewed. For example, when you look at our Gold Bug Park, it's doing really well. This only represents about half of the tour season, and it's about flat, and that's because of just only being able to offer so many tours with the amount of volunteers and part-time staff that we have. And some of the school districts are kind of down in attendance, so we're booking the same number of tours, but there may not be the same number of students in those tours. We had an outstanding aquatic season this last summer. The weather treated us well, and attendance was up almost across the board. Special interest classes for this particular period of time were off a little, and that's because we lost a few of our really popular instructors during that period for myriad of personal reasons not related to the city. As far as our adult sports program goes, it's staying fairly consistent with the exception of our 5-on-5 basketball league, which is down, and that's pretty much due to competition from Cameron Park, who has a new facility, and they can offer those games to be played during the week. And because of our lack of gym facilities in the area, our games are played on Sundays. So some of the teams have gravitated towards playing during the week as opposed to taking a day out of their weekend. We just finished up youth basketball, another outstanding season there. It stays pretty flat, and that's also due to kind of our demographic in that most of the school districts that participate in our league either have declining or flat enrollment. So that number doesn't change too much. And so overall, we're doing really well. And I know it's always important to Mr. Warren. I think we're going to be able to meet our revenue projections that go along with this attendance. So with that, I'll turn it back to Dave.
Thank you, Steve. The next slide is regarding building division activity. I'll hand it over to Mr. Rivas to talk about that.
Thank you, Dave. What this chart does is it's basically comparing the first half of the fiscal years for July 2010 through December of 2010, and then 2011, 2012, 2013. And so if you look, we're about equal in terms of the building permits that have been issued. Our plan checks appear to be down. I don't know how much of an indicator that really is, other than we're moving into the building cycle again, and we have a lot of permits that have issued that are still, we're going to get calls for inspection, so we're hoping that number will pick up. And then looking at the fees, I think we're up in both cases. which is very good, because I think earlier on during the recovery we saw a big increase in smaller projects, which didn't really generate a lot of fees, but a lot of the permits we've been issuing as of late have been larger projects that are generating much higher fees. So if we look at the next table, this table is basically just to show the last table you looked at was based on the first half of the fiscal year, where this is on calendar year. And so although it looks like maybe there's a slight decline, if you were to look at how many building permits were issued total, it's 257 to date, which I think is fairly good. So we're probably at least a good halfway when compared to 2012 through 2013 and 2014. So looking at 2015, we've got 257 issued, which I think is fairly good. For housing starts, we're up. We had very, very little housing activity in 2013 and 2014. 2015, we have, actually 2014, we had 10, 9 of which were during this fiscal year. So it's good to see some housing starts, which I think is definitely a good indication of a turn in the economy. And then turning next to planning and zoning revenue activity, we're certainly up. You can see where we are in the year end for the previous fiscal years. We're at 18, almost 19,000 currently, which is very good considering the average year end to date has been about 16,000. So I think we're doing fairly well so far. And then turning to the next one, I think the next, this is the engineering division activity. I think we're doing very well there as far as, again, this is an indication of the more complex permits that have been submitted to the Planning and Building Division. A lot of these more complex projects do require engineering review. Many of those then are on a time and material basis, and some of them require water and or sewer hookup fees. So if you look, we can see we're up compared to last time. We're up quite a bit from just 2,300 to 11,000 for development plan review. And then going down to encroachment permits, which can also be an indication of a lot of activities where a lot of the construction takes place within right-of-ways where you have to issue an encroachment permit. We're up quite a bit. We got 1,900 in the last fiscal year. We're now at 3,300. And then going down to the sewer fees, we only had the revenue generated last fiscal year was 6,200. We're now at 62,800. And then the TIM fees, we showed a big jump. We went from 37, almost 38,000 last fiscal year to 142,000. So I think we're doing fairly well. I think we have a lot of large projects in the pipeline, and we're keeping our fingers crossed, and especially with the vote that the council took to extend the entitlements. We have been in contact with a number of those permits that would have expired, and we're hoping then that financing will be better available and they'll be able to move their projects forward, and we'll see these numbers improve. And that's all I've got. Any questions you have?
Thank you, Pierre. Now moving on to our most significant local economic indicators, our sales tax, which the city receives 1 percentage point of the first 7.5% of the sales tax. It currently represents 52% of your general fund. We live and die by sales tax. You continue to have strong per capita sales tax, $359 per person as of 2013. The city's currently ranked number 43 out of 539 cities for that same year. The quarter ended September 2014. We actually had a reported decline in sales tax of 3.06%, or $32,000, and that's because there was a one-time adjustment in 2013 which skewed that number. So if you make the adjustment, one of your larger retailers reported early in the third quarter of 2013, and that drove the number in 2013 up, which makes this number look smaller, your delta. So the actual performance is 4.78% increase, or $46,000, which is good news. The state overall, the third quarter preliminary 5.9%. The Board of Equalization forecasts the fourth quarter, and you kind of you can't see it there because I blew it up, but it's 3.2%, and there it goes. 2.8% in the first quarter of 2015 and 3.2% in the second quarter of 2015. And that's what we did assume in our forecast before you tonight. The next slide's hard to read, but basically it's the performance of all the neighboring agencies throughout the Sacramento region. The next slide is your sales tax sources by business type, and you can see that these are all important, but the largest contributors are the auto dealers and building materials and farm implements. Auto dealers making up 21%, and building and materials 19%. And that's important when you look at the next slide, which shows you your growth. And you can see there's winners and losers depending on the category for the quarter year over year as of September 30th. But you can see that, for example, apparel stores were actually up 293%, where other retail was down 0.62%. Building and materials and farm implements was up by 48%, which is great. Auto dealers fairly flat at 0.22% decline. So you can see the differences there. The next slide shows you your historical sales tax over the last 10 years compared to our forecast. The red bar indicates actual sales tax. The blue bar indicates actual sales tax deflated by inflation for the year. And then green indicates cumulative inflation. So when you look at that bar on the right, which is your 2014 forecast, it looks a lot better than the middle of the recession there in 09-10. However, when you take into account inflation, we're actually at the 08-09 level. And inflation over the last, since 06-07 is about 16%. Now moving on to your budget, you did adopt a balanced budget, totaled $17 million and some change. It did assume economic impacts. Your general fund was adopted at $7.4 million and included a $75,000 contingency. Just as a reminder, you implemented a retirement plan for new employees that is less expensive. New employees are required to pay the entire employee contribution. It's currently saving the city over $250,000 annually, which is great news. Now, looking at your general fund in aggregate, you can see that our revised budget, and we have a deficit there in your revised budget, and that's because you adopted a vacation cash out program, which basically utilized fund balance, your reserve in your general fund to pay out the liability of vacation, which we have some high balances right now. And then the forecast column is based on our analysis recently, taking into account what we actually experienced up till December this fiscal year, and what we're forecasting through June 30th. And so you can see we actually forecast revenues $146,000 less, or 1.96%. That's the bad news. The good news is we're forecasting expenditures $266,000 less. And the primary reason for the $146,000 decrease in revenue is sales tax, adjusting our forecast based on trends and analysis. And the expenditures going down primarily because we didn't have to make our first debt service on our equipment lease, and we had several vacancies in our positions. Now kind of drilling down into your revenues, you can see sales tax, a slight decrease from our budget, $166,000 or 4.14%. All other taxes, that's your property tax, TOT, all of your utilities, franchise taxes, transfer tax, those are actually up. We're forecasting by $59,000, primarily because of property tax, up by $16,000. And your TOT, fortunately, is actually experiencing good trends, $23,000 more than budget. Construction permits, Mr. Rivas covered that. Slight decrease. We want to be conservative. Intergovernmental revenues, the $44,000 increase is primarily due to an increase in vehicle license fees, as well as our prison realignment monies that we receive. Charges for services down slightly by $3,000. That can be anywhere from planning and zoning fees to recreation and park fees to special interest classes. So in aggregate, those fees down slightly, $3,000. Fines and forfeitures, actually an increase of $16,000, and that's primarily due to the vehicle code fines actually being down slightly. The chief submitted a claim, reimbursement claim for the services he provided during the King Fire, he and his department, in supporting the county at that time. And use of money and property, a slight increase of $2,500. And lastly, other financing sources, that $71,000 is due to slightly less CIP cost recovery. Our engineering department was going through a transition. We had vacancies, and so there wasn't as much cost recovery. And so based on our forecast, we forecast slightly less cost recovery on that. So overall, $146,000 less revenue. Expenditures, again, drilling down to each department. You can see that overall departments are down. Police department, $176,000, primarily because of position vacancies, savings. Development services, same reason. Community services, there were some costs associated with vandalism, tree removal, and some other items, but primarily those areas that we had unforeseen expenses that we had to experience. Elected officials, a saving in contracted services of $24,000. City administration, $1,400 savings. Finance, $4,400. Both of those are for contractual service savings. Non-departmental, our cost of animal control. Overall, that's the reason why we have $18,000 savings. What we budgeted, what we thought we were going to expend in animal control based on our current trend and experience, we're going to save about $18,000 in aggregate. So again, savings of $266,000. Transfers, no change there. And just a few comments. One is this does assume pay-as-you-go costs for GASB 45, which is your post-employment retiree health. We're paying for the premiums today, but nothing in the future. We did assume expending the entire $75,000, which you've done because of some unforeseen projects like the police department roof and a few other things. The surplus is based on current revenue and expenditures. The surplus is primarily due to, again, by the $266,000 in savings. Kind of orienting ourselves, where are we compared to 06-07 high water mark? That was just before the recession. We're still operating, we're providing about the same level of service with about $1 million in less revenue in your general fund. We're also expending $737,000 less. And instead of transferring out $111,000 for CIP projects, we're still having to transfer in net $153,000. However, we do have a surplus, which is nice. Another thing to note is that between 2007 and 2014, we experienced 16% inflation. So if you take that 12% less revenue and the 16% inflation, we're actually operating with about 29% less resources today. Changing gears to Measure H, Measure J. This is your augmentation for police salaries and benefits. We actually anticipate forecasting $33,000 more in revenue year over year. Our budget's down slightly, but year over year, 3.59%. It does pay back $10,000 for the interfund loan to the Reserve for Economic Uncertainties, and we're forecasting a $61,000 surplus. Sewer Enterprise Fund, you may recall that we're working our way in funding our entire 2006 SRF loan payment. The budget adopted assumed approximately $565,000 coming from your reserve, rate stabilization reserve. Revenues, we're forecasting coming in at $126,000. You may recall with the drought, people are conserving water, which affects our sewer revenues. We weren't sure where that was going to land. We actually forecasted at your budget 5 to 15% conservation depending on the billing period. What we're seeing now based on the first 6 months experience is we're actually going to receive approximately $126,000 less. The good news is expenditures, because of vacancies and positions, is going to save you $119,000. So The end result is $571,000 coming out of your reserve, and that would leave us with $422,000 in your reserve for next year's payment. It's also important to note that at your next meeting, we will be bringing a contract for another water sewer rate study, and this is something we'll be addressing in that rate study, just so you know. Water rates, or water enterprise fund, excuse me. Similar story. Because of conservation, we're forecasting revenues to be down by about $38,000. The good news is, because of vacant positions, saving $119,000, you end up with $76,000 surplus, which we recommend would be set aside for capital replacement. Measure H. Overall, we're looking at $33,000 more in sales tax year over year. However, based on budget, it's about $39,000 less. It is affording a 10% discount, and you can see the transfer out of $489,000 that goes directly to your sewer ratepayers on their bill as a 10% discount. Currently, your Measure H fund has $1.4 million cash in the bank for 8 water and sewer infrastructure projects, and as you've heard in recent meetings, the Main Street project is off and running, and that alone is $970,000 that of that 1.4 that's being applied to that. The other 7 projects are in the mix being designed, and our engineering department's working on those. Non-major funds, these are your smaller funds. Just wanted to comment on them real quickly. Gas tax, we're going to get a 1-year bump because of a true up from prior accounting arrangements the state made. We anticipate receiving about $29,000 extra gas tax this year, and we're hoping that our forecast will come in fruition and basically do a small road project with that money. Parking district, we anticipate a $2,600 deficit. Mr. Morris and I have met over the last 12 months several times with the parking committee, and we're working on solutions to shore up that fund, and we'll be bringing some recommendations to you probably later this year on that. SRO grant, not much to report there. The AB 3229 COPS grant, it actually shows a $23,000 deficit. That's being really conservative. The state has indicated $100,000 coming in, but last year we actually received more than $100,000, and I anticipate we'll receive more than $100,000 this year. But until we see it in writing, I'm not going to count on it. So if it does come in at $100,000, the general fund and Measure J may have to contribute more to the fund to make that balance, but that's the way we're presenting it tonight. Bulletproof vests, Chief anticipates expending $3,500 for new vests this year. And the 2012 COPS grant, that's a 3-year grant. We got a late start in utilizing it. We anticipate by the end of this fiscal year we'll have enough to partially fund a position next year, which is good news. Slide 29 was actually revised. You have the revised sheet on that, and there was 2 adjustments. One was to the green box, the General Capital Improvement Program Fund. The transfers in were increased, and that was for the pool repairs that Mr. Yule brought to you earlier this year, and the old City Hall study that Mr. Morris brought to you, and it was approved by the council. And so the transfers in for those projects, and then in the purple box on the bottom far right, you can see that the forecasted transfers out increase from the Reserve for Economic Uncertainties, and that's directly related to the green box, the transfers in. So that was the change there. A few comments, slight deficits in your Orchard Hill and Cottonwood LMDs. Your Ridge at Orchard Hill, Zone 1 and Zone 1A, slight surplus that'll go towards future capital improvements. General Liability Fund, knock on wood, had a good year. I had a phone conference with Mr. Driscoll, and we've gone through the claims, and this year, not to jinx us, but we're having a good year. So in aggregate, looking at all your funds, your operating funds, your revised budget demonstrated a $58,000 deficit. What we're actually forecasting is a $154,000 surplus, primarily due to Measure H and some of the other funds that are experiencing surpluses. Final comments, just to sum it up, as we've kind of hopefully indicated through the various analysis, the local economy is improving. It's continued to improve, and the city council and management continue to operate the city in a prudent and responsible manner. We do anticipate year-end operating expenditures to be within existing operating budgets for most funds, and we'll provide you with another update on May 5th at your budget workshop. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions or receive any comments. Thank you.
Questions, comments? Wendy.
Brief question. Thank you, Dave. Always appreciate your updates.
You're welcome.
All right, so we got a bump in gas tax revenue, this year, and our gas tax is used to fund the daily maintenance of our roads, pothole repairs, striping, daily basic maintenance.
Right.
Do we expect the gas fund to continue at that level next year?
Actually, no. As a matter of fact, we anticipate the gas tax apportionment that the city receives to decline, even at the budgeted level that we budgeted this year. And it's for a variety of reasons. The formula is fairly complex, but the primary reason is people are driving less.
Right.
We have more efficient vehicles, and the gas tax is a fixed amount based on gallons. And quite frankly, it's an antiquated formula. It doesn't work anymore.
I had heard levels of around maybe perhaps 220 next year. Is that
Approximately 220.
kind of what we're estimating?
That's correct. So in past years, we've received around $300,000 a year. And keep in mind, inflation is eroding those dollars.
Right.
A dollar today is worth less than a dollar tomorrow. So not only are we not recovering the cost of inflation, but they're giving us less money to start with.
Right.
And so it's just, and you know the needs. We have $19 million in deferred maintenance. It doesn't pencil out.
So it's a downward spiral on our maintenance revenue stream.
Correct.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Anyone else? Comments? Okay, thank you, Dave, as usual. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
I'm sorry. Mike, would you like to
You've waited so long.
Mickey,
Mickey Kaiserman, president of Placerville. Excuse me. This is the first time I've really seen the detailed budget like this. And I have a question. You don't show on slide, let's see, what is it? The last slide here. Slide 29. Is there a detailed budget going down that shows those numbers in the revenue stream and the expenditures? Or is it made up of all the pieces that are put together there?
I'm sorry. What?
That's a question. It's a general question. I'm not sure how the total operating budget shows a revenue and expenditure number, but the detail there's no like summary detail that shows where those revenues came from. Is that the consolidation of all the previous slides?
Okay, Mickey, is that your only question of Dave's?
No. And my other question is on slide 17, there's an expenditure numbers, 7.7 million in the revised budget and 7.4 million in the forecast. When you go to the detail on slide 19, it doesn't tie to that number.
Okay, is that it?
That's it.
Okay, I'm going to ask Mr. Warren to answer your questions.
Great question. So this document, and I've checked it 3 times, the numbers from page 17 all the way through total that last page on page 29. So this is slide 29. It's your total operating budget. So all your operating funds that were presented And it doesn't, what this report doesn't do, because otherwise it would be 60 pages long, is show you every piece of income and expenditure. And so in aggregate, it provides the reader with, the total number for each fund, what your total revenues are, what your total, but for the general fund, because there's so many moving parts to your general fund, it's one of your largest funds, we do break out on page 18 and 19 the revenue sources and expenditure types by department. Slide 17 is included in slide 29.
Dave, maybe, can I help?
Yeah.
I think I see what he's, on slide 17.
Yes.
The revenues match for slide 18. The totals, they do match, they're correct. You see those at the bottom?
Oh, I see what you're
However,
saying.
on
Yes.
slide 19, the expenditures don't match to that.
Right.
I think that's what his question was.
Right, and that's a formatting issue. What other non-departmental includes transfers in, transfers out. And so on page 17, we have broken out expenditures from transfers. So if you add the $7,435,271 to the $153,022,
Okay.
you come up with
That makes sense. Okay.
$7,282,000.
Yeah, that clarifies that by adding those two pieces together, but it doesn't show which category it went to, but I guess it netted it into it, that expenditure total.
Transfers are actually considered non-departmental, so
Okay.
they benefit typically the entire general fund.
My other comment is it'd be interesting to just see how the 17 million makes up into broader categories. Is just a line, because everything else is broken out, but to see the 17 million in total revenues and the expenditures in some kind of category summary sheet would be interesting, just to know where all it is, even though certain sections were broken out. Just my comment. I'm sure that's going to happen at the budget meeting.
Yeah, there's actually a budget and brief that's on our website that provides more of that type of detail if you're interested.
Okay, I'll take a look at it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mickey. And I have to say that Dave's office door is always open, so if you want to talk to him about it further, I'm sure he'd be more than happy to have the discussion.
Absolutely.
Okay, seeing no one else come forward, I'm going to close public hearing and bring it back to council. And I understand, Mr. Clarici, you have a question.
Yeah, and maybe we can talk about this offline. I was on slide 12. It shows the Sacramento region sales tax growth. Then it shows a bunch of other communities, and you kind of look at some and get sales tax envy. Some of the numbers. But I'm assuming, and maybe I'll just come and, since your door is always open, I will come and chat with you about this, because to me, I'd like to see sort of, because you can look at a number and say, oh, it's 23%. Well, in Amador City, it's so small, that could be like one person making an additional purchase, and it blows the numbers out of the water because the place is.
Somebody bought a
No, not Amador City.
Killjoy.
Amador City's a lovely place, and we should all go there someday. But
And buy something.
but Auburn is a big town with lots of parts, kind of like this one, slightly larger, probably half again as big as this town, as Placerville. And they had a big increase. So, at some point I'd like to maybe sit down with you and say, what kind of drives those big numbers? Because and then sort of, because, it could be slow and steady, steady and slow if you're kind of clicking along at a 5% growth or 6% growth or whatever it is, but you do that consistently over time, that's better than having big giant spikes in your sales tax.
I can tell you Auburn,
Yeah.
the reason, they have Nella Oil.
They have what?
Oh.
Nella Oil. It's a bulk plant, and that's
That's
a very
what it
large sales tax driver
Right.
in Auburn.
Although I'm imagining with the price of gas,
Yeah.
although it went back up again. Okay.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah.
The other thing you have to realize in these numbers, lots of times, just how the same as ours says -3%. Remember, there was that error was in there.
Exactly.
I was looking at this report and I thought, it's interesting that Auburn and Colfax next door to each other,
Yeah.
one has a 23 plus, the other has a 23 minus. Was there something that happened there? And there could be
Yeah.
misreporting of taxes to the wrong agency and et
That's
cetera.
fine.
So there's a number of things. I mean, it's good to look at these, but
Oh, sure.
remember that there are always errors, and a lot of those, for those type of questions, there's not really a good way for us to get an answer of what causes those things. So you
Yeah,
never know.
unfortunately, we're not privy to the level of detail. We have privy to the level of detail where we can actually pinpoint it by business, but we can't do that for another agency.
Right.
And they're not allowed to share
Oh, I
that with
see,
us.
okay.
Confidential.
I see.
They can, by business type, they can provide it, but not by the level of business.
So we actually have data that is like, boy, I'm going to sound stupid here, but we actually have data like Acme Widgets. If they were in town here, we could say Acme Widgets has this much sales tax, and the Joe's whatever market has this much sales tax?
We do. It's confidential, but yes.
Well, yeah, I'm not. That's why I said Acme. Okay, great. That's fascinating.
Confidential, so she can't ask.
I can't ask you.
Okay. Any other council comments? Okay, thank you, Mr. Warren.
I move that we acknowledge and file the fiscal year 2014-2015 mid-year budget report as presented.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Borelli.
Aye.
Councilmember Clarici.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Patton.
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilkins.
Aye.
Okay, now I will go on with 13. Again, my thanks to everyone who bailed me out during my sick period. I'm going to ask for reports on El Dorado County Transit Authority. Councilmember Wilkins.
We had our meeting on Thursday, and it was nice to have Director Thomas, alternate, sitting in with us. And I think I mentioned it before, but we are going to have the grand opening on the 24th at the upgraded facility of April 24th.
Thank you. Transportation Commission.
Thank you. And I'd like to say it was wonderful having Commissioner Wilkins at Transportation this time. And I know it's late, and I don't even know if there's anyone listening on TV, but I'm going to go over briefly a really important report that was given at the El Dorado County Transportation Commission. And this item is of main interest and will continue to be for our fair city. And it was a report on how the funding flows to this city through the El Dorado County Transportation Commission. And this was on the Regional Surface Transportation Program. This was established by state statute, and it directs the Federal Surface Transportation Fund. So it directs federal dollars. It's known as the RSTIP program. Now, 3/4 of these funds, they're called urban funds, and they are to be used in populations of over $200,000. And so 3/4 of the funds go directly to El Dorado County. We receive none of the urban funds. 1/4 of the RSTIP funds are for rural areas. And what's important about this is that these funds are more discretionary, and they don't have all the regulations around a federal transportation project, so they're really quite valuable and sought after. And so these funds are distributed through the Transportation Commission based on a formula. And the formula that it's applied that we either get the formula figure or a safety net of $200,000, whichever is greater. And it's usually $200,000. So that's a guarantee that we're going to receive that, and that way we can plan our city road projects. So basically we have two pots of money. Our gas tax, which we heard tonight, is in decline, about $305 this year, probably about $220,000 next year, and that's for our daily maintenance. The other pot of money we receive for roads is a guarantee of $200,000, and that is for discretionary road projects in our city. And that's it. And we're about $19–20 million in deficit. So that is my depressing report.
And if we say it enough times, maybe somebody will listen to us,
That's right.
right?
And also, on a note, we have saved that $200,000 safety net for 2 years in order to pave Main Street this spring. So really important. So that's exciting.
I was going to
yes.
thank you for saying that. I was
You bet.
going to.
And I'd like to add to that.
Oh,
Actually.
right.
I know, why not? The money that we're talking about here actually is another sales. It's a gas tax item. It's the Transportation Development Act funds, which fall prey to the same kinds of issues of people driving less and they use cars that don't use as much gas. So all of these funding sources that we collect from these various little bits are really they're problematic at best, because they are in a situation where we're doing the right thing. We don't, well, I don't know if driving less is the right thing, but we are certainly buying cars that don't use as much fuel. And And those are good things, but then they hit us in the one area that's a direct funding source. The other thing that we got, and it was talked about at the meeting, but we actually got it as a separate item, and it's something that we probably should share with folks, and that is how all of the transportation money is spent in in El Dorado County through the Transportation Commission. And it is, as you would imagine, it all gets spent along Highway 50 because that's where the action is. And most of it is on Highway 50. It's actually money spent for the freeway. And it's amazing how much of it is spent in really two places. If you look at this map, it gets spent in two places, El Dorado Hills and here, and Placerville. And there's a lot of good reasons for that. There's a lot of people who live in El Dorado Hills, and there's a lot of action in Placerville. But it should really be, and then there are other projects that are kind of littered around the rest of the county. But and then Tahoe is its own thing, so we don't worry about that. But I think it would be it was a very good document and something we should make available to people that showed just where the money's spent and also what the projects are. So you get to see, like, on the one hand, Silver Valley Interchange, which is $100 million project, and our bicycle path, which is probably not $100 million.
Probably not.
Probably not. So it's kind of interesting to see the mix of things, how they get spread out. So anyway, that's it for that.
You know, I really and truly wanted to bring that. I wanted to have some copies made of that report because I think it's just fantastic. It really tells the whole story. And I was going to ask Joni to run some copies, and I totally, in this sickness that I want to put them on the back table so that folks can get, and I also would like to maybe see it. I know it's on, Transportation has a wonderful website, but I'm not too sure that a lot of people know about it, and I don't know, but anyway, maybe we could post that, just that particular report on our website so that folks can, because it's very, very interesting and informative, and folks can really see where the monies go. Okay, that's it, John?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Carol, LAFCO.
I'll have to defer to Councilmember Clarici.
Thank you. We had a very brief meeting for the actual LAFCO portion of it. We did pass the budget, or we passed a preliminary budget. I'm imagining there, but there was a budget, and I'm going to say this. I don't know exactly how the mechanisms work, but I know that we pay a piece that goes and funds LAFCO.
The city.
Yeah, the city does, and it's split between us and anyway, not going to get into details. It is likely that we're probably going to spend a little bit more just because of some budget issues and stuff. Actually all good things that they're doing at that end, but it's probably going to cost us a little bit more. And that should be something that we'll all think about. So anyway, other than that, it was a very brief meeting, and then they held up 2-hour ethics training. Mercifully, I had already taken my ethics training, and I got to go home.
Patty and I are more ethical.
Yeah.
But only by a couple of months.
Wendy and I are ethical now.
Yeah.
So
Anyway, so that's it.
I know.
I'm up for SACOG.
Okay, yes.
SACOG is kind of the same old thing on a different day. They are hip deep in their Metropolitan Transportation Plan. They're going on and on about all that. They've been out talking to other folks. They actually had a meeting with us over at the county probably more than a month ago now. But that's basically their focus right now. I honestly, even though I know what they're talking about, I need to sit down with folks like Carl Hagan. I haven't really done that. Supervisor Wilkinson and I carpool together. Veer Camp. I get all these families mixed up. I'm sorry.
Related.
I should have just left it with Brian. Everybody would have known I was talking about. Anyway, we carpool down the hill, and that's actually been very fruitful too. And there's a learning curve there as well to sort of position us. We're positioning, basically our role there is to make sure that we're always positioned to get the money that we will get and to keep that drumbeat going, and then to support other folks in initiatives that might interest us and be beneficial to the region. So, but that's all about SACOG. But they're MTP all the time, and that's basically what that entire meeting was about. So.
Okay. Next would be SEDCOR, and that would be me, who managed to be sick for that day too. And unfortunately, my alternate, Tricia, was unable to attend because she had another meeting to go to. So I don't have a report on SEDCOR. What I do have a very short report on, because I know it's getting late, but I wanted to say that I went to a League of Cities meeting in Reading last week, and the program, I have to tell you, they just did a beautiful job with this meeting, and also the folks, the Chamber of Commerce and the Visitors Bureau of Reading just were wonderful hosts. And we toured Turtle Bay Museum and the Sundial Bridge. And what I thought was interesting is that our presentations were addressing Prop 47 and 109, and it was presented by Robert Paoletti, who I think probably our chief knows. He used to be chief in Stockton, but he's now the Reading police chief, and he gave quite an interesting report. We think we've got problems. They really do, and I think their location has a lot to do with it, and of course they're a much larger city. And then Tracy Neal, who is the Shasta County Sheriff's Chief Probation Officer, and she told us a lot about how the agencies are working together on this homeless issue, et cetera. In the next program we had was on sustainable groundwater management, and that was most interesting. We had the groundwater management program manager from the State Water Resources Control Board, and then the Northern Regional Planning Branch Chief from the Department of Water Resources. And it created quite a lively conversation because everybody is so concerned about this water issue. And no solutions were arrived at, but and there's tons of questions. And then we had a no-host reception in the Turtle Bay Museum, and followed by a business meeting and a city roundtable discussion. And again, they asked for more participation from our city, not addressing it to me, but they would like more folks to sign up to be on the league commissions. And I have to tell you, I'm not beating the drum because I want everybody to come to Placerville, but I have to tell you, I was very impressed with Reading. I had never turned off the highway. I've just gone straight to Mount Shasta or whatever. That is a very, very interesting place to go. And this Turtle Bay, they have been fortunate in receiving a huge land grant. They have been fortunate in getting folks to contribute financially, and they have just done a stellar job. And just going to Turtle Bay, that area is worth turning off the highway for. So like I say, I was very impressed, and it was a good meeting. So that's my report. Okay, next, request for future agenda items.
Yes.
Yes.
I guess this would be an agenda item, maybe not. I don't know exactly how we'll handle this, but the conversation previously that we had, and everybody showed up for, a lot of people showed up for, about the courthouse, it is sort of weigh on me. I'm sure it does all of us, and I mean, the reality is I think this document has been finalized, and so how much you can actually get out of the state now as the proponent and the applicant on the environmental document is questionable. But I would suggest that maybe in the interest of the people who showed up here and spoke very passionately about this subject, that maybe we do try to write a letter of some kind or another, or somehow or another reach out to the state courts board and let them know of the conversation that was had here tonight. I think that would be a good thing to do. I'm not sure how much impact it will have into actually changing the reality of the situation, but it'll show that we recognize that the folks came here, they spoke passionately, they have serious issues and concerns, and that we could relay that on to the state. If anything, it might help us with our negotiations in asking for resources to help over the next few years deal with what becomes of the courthouse if, in fact, the state doesn't decide to go ahead with this project. So I would suggest that. I don't know technically being a newbie here, exactly how all that would work. We might have to bring it back in 2 weeks, I don't know, but I would suggest that we do that.
And I'd like to piggyback on that and just let our merchants know and our citizens know that we are not on opposite sides of this issue. We all feel the same way, I think, about our courthouse, and we are very concerned about it moving. And so I think we can state in our letter that our preference is option 2 if we wish to do that, but realizing that if that is not an option, that if that's not a viable option, then we very much request their help in helping us repurpose her successfully for the sake of our downtown economy, because our downtown economy is so focused on that. As in my discussions with our representative from the AOC, the Judicial Council, the RFP that they have come back with us from my suggestion that they help us fund a study was much more comprehensive than Cleve and I hoped for, which was really good news. It's talking about helping us, figure out all of the physical constraints of the building and what we need to do with that, what the options are as far as uses, as well as funding sources. And that's a huge thing, because we've not, the identifying funding sources for it is always, the big elephant in the room. So if we can, keep encouraging the state to follow through on that promise, this letter might help us do that. Because while we have gotten confirmation from Laura Sands of the Administrative Office of the Courts, the state has not finally agreed to fund all of it yet. We're still in negotiations with that. So I think a letter stating all of this could help us with that, at the very least, and in support of our merchants.
I have to say too that I think when we first got word of this, and Mr. Morris relayed this in his report, the way I got it is that this is, the court is definitely leaving downtown. And so we focused so much on trying to keep that courthouse within the Placerville city limits that we didn't address this right away. I mean, everybody was just so focused on not letting it go down on Ponderosa Road, or, God forbid, move to Rancho Cordova, because these were two things that we were told. And so I think maybe because of that it might have been interpreted that we didn't care that it was leaving, and that, as I said earlier, is so far from the truth, because we do care. And that's the purpose of this Blue Ribbon Committee, is to talk about the economic replacement, because we're well aware of what it's going to do to our downtown. We're just well aware. And but what I don't want to do is make too much disturbance that the courts are going to say, well, then we'll just leave Placerville. And we don't want that to happen either. So I don't know what the right avenue is.
Well, yeah.
I'd like to make a comment if I could.
Yes, you may.
So first of all, it is not within our jurisdiction as the code said that we were presented with.
Correct.
It has been talked about for a very long time, and I'm going to go back further than 2002. I mean, it's been talked about, and there was discussion of a Blue Ribbon Committee a long time ago. So to say that this community wasn't aware of it is absolutely false. And there was talk at PDA meetings over the years, multiple times, about the Blue Ribbon Committee and the courts. Now, what happens, as we all know, is our little community changes. New people come in, other people leave, whatever, and now we have some people who really don't know what's going on. My problem with bringing this as our council, it's not our project. So it's very important to me that we look at all the alternatives, that we are informed, but since we're not the governing body over the courthouse, should we, and I'm going to have to direct it to our attorney, should we do this in more of an open forum neighborhood chat rather than an agendized item as elected officials, and I don't know that. So we can talk about it as a community rather than
As a
take
council.
formal action.
Sure, go ahead.
Let me, if I could, comment first on that. The thing is, you're right, this is not within our jurisdiction. However, let's say that we were completely, in a different stage right now, just starting the process, for example, and we did want to encourage them to keep the courthouse downtown. And we had this we could bring up an item and say, just like we are now, we could have an agenda item and say, let's talk to the court, send a letter, even adopt a resolution to send to the court to say, we adamantly oppose the courthouse moving out of downtown, et cetera, et cetera. That's not within our jurisdiction to say what will ultimately happen, but to encourage the state to make a determination based on our input is something that is totally within our jurisdiction to do. So I don't think there's a problem with agendizing that on the city, before the city council, to say, consider doing something like that, to send a letter to our recommendation of how they should look at the alternatives in the EIR, for example. Now, again, legally, the legal issue in terms, John can respond to that in terms of, our jurisdiction over this. You're right, we don't have any say in whether it comes or goes, other than just like every citizen that was out there tonight that was saying, we have that same right to say, to comment and say, we wish you wouldn't move it.
Cleve is exactly right. We don't have the ability or the power to make that determination, but we do have the ability to comment and to try and sway their decision if it's at all possible. Now, they have to consider all the comments to the environmental document, and they have to respond to those comments. I'm not sure when the comment period closes, or has it closed?
And this is something I'm looking for Pierre or you to answer for me. They've issued the final EIR, and this was something I don't know that I've seen before, but they've allowed for a 10-day comment period now on the final EIR. That was something that was new to me. I don't know, maybe you've heard of that. But
if I can
normally
comment.
Once the EIR is final, I've seen that's it.
It's my recollection, and maybe Mr. Driscoll can correct me, but under CEQA, there is a 10-day period by which the public can comment on the final EIR and actually look at the agency's response to the comments that were provided on the draft EIR prior to the agency making a decision on the project or certifying the EIR. So at some point in time, the courts are going to have to certify that EIR as meeting the requirements of CEQA, but there's at least a minimum 10-day period after issuing the final EIR before they can certify it.
Okay. And are we in that period now, Pierre?
And I think that's already... One, but I'd like to take this opportunity, if it would assist the council as far as historical, and maybe Mr. Driscoll again being involved, or even maybe Mr. Morris. But it's my understanding that there was a period of time when the courts were looking at various project alternatives to locate the courts, and there were a number of sites outside of the city limits. And so some years ago, the city fought hard to impress upon the state that really the courts belong within the city of Placerville, the city of Placerville being the county seat of El Dorado County. And so the courts did acquiesce, and they found an alternative site that was near the jail. And so it's my understanding that that ship has sailed, so to speak, in terms of identifying and defining the project. And so now they're in the CEQA stage. So in order to develop the site that they have chosen, the site that's by the courthouse, they have to comply with CEQA and, of course, do an EIR to provide for a full disclosure document of the environmental impacts that would be realized if they implement the project. So I think, yes, the courts have a alternative too that sort of bifurcates the court facility and the two facilities to maintain it on Main Street, but I think that was probably because that's more of a feasible alternative that they were required to identify under CEQA to mitigate environmental impacts, not so much as an opportunity to, redecide that they're going to go ahead and leave the courts on Main Street. But I just wanted to throw that out. Maybe Mr. Morris or Mr. Driscoll have some additional comments on that. But that's my understanding as far as the process.
Pierre's recollection is spot on, so to speak.
Right.
Yeah, they did an analysis before 2010 where they analyzed the various properties that they could look at, and I think, as the mayor has indicated, they were looking at property down in Ponderosa Road. They were looking at others, and they did valuations and studies on these properties, etc. And at that time, we were told that the court's going to move. It's just a question of where.
Right.
And that's all you guys can weigh in on, really. So we fought long and hard to keep it in the city limits of Placerville. But in theory, and I say in theory because once the document is completed, it will present the various alternatives that are contained therein, and the decision-making body, if you will, has to decide what the project is going to be. Is it going to be the project as presented? Is there going to be an alternate? Is it going to be a no project scenario? I mean, theoretically, they're supposed to go through all this and make this analysis. So I can tell you that if you write some sort of a letter to them, communicate your concerns, in theory, that should be considered, but whether they do anything about it, I don't know. But bottom line is, it's not going to hurt.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, once again, unless this is in a completely different animal, that 10-day period that comes after they put the final document out on the street again is simply, it's like a waiting period. I've been through a lot of these, and everybody goes, oh, well, that's like another bite at the apple, and it really isn't. There isn't an additional you could comment all you want. You can send comments in all through the process. You can send comments in. But those comments, if you send a comment, like if anybody did prior to that date last week, they're not required to comment on it. They're not required to, as far as I know, I may be wrong, but they're not required to do anything on it. It's basic. I mean, in many respects, it's a period, and they run anywhere from 10 to 30 days. I've worked on projects that had 30-day from the time, and that was mostly just administrative issues. A lot of it is just people lining up their lawyers to sue them once the document is finally made. I mean, I say that, and it's not cavalier. It's like, literally, that's what you're doing. You're lining up your legal things if you're going to go after that document. Now, there ought to be a preferred alternative identified. They don't have to have one, but there should be a preferred alternative. And my guess is the preferred alternative is put the jail or put the court over by the jail. That's probably the preferred alternative right now, and that's probably what's in that document, and that document is probably done. And so if, in fact, that deadline was last whenever, I was looking at some of the local sites, and they mentioned that. It's not uncommon for people to not really understand the CEQA process or the NEPA process. It's very complicated. There's lots of moving parts. We don't even have to say in this letter, if we decide to do that, that we even, we can say, lots of folks showed up and they want to keep the court downtown. We also need help because we have to think of the whole town. We are responsible for thinking of the whole town. Thank God they kept the court in the town. From our perspective, thank God they kept the court in the town. We look at the whole town, not just the individual bits. So now, if they move the court, we now have to line up what we're going to do with the courthouse. That could all be part of this. If we want to have a public forum, that's fine. I think it would be educational.
Actually, I have a question. Do you need council action on an agendized item to write a letter from a city staff's perspective? Based on...
Well, I hope so.
Well, based on what I've heard from the council right now, though, I'm not sure I have. I think I need direction from the council, and to do that, I would have to agendize it. Okay. Put it that way. Yeah, I'm not convinced that I have enough, and I can't get direction from you because it's not agendized. So, right. And I don't believe that waiting 2 weeks to send that letter is going to have a huge impact one way or the other based on where they're at now in the process. The letter should not be addressing the EIR. It should simply be addressing the project and our feelings that, in their consideration, do you want to look at, could you look at that alternative too? I do want to emphasize, and I think I stressed this when I spoke earlier, my concern that we don't do something that causes the project to, again, go back to a stage where it might completely move out of.
And we certainly
No,
don't want
we
that.
support that.
We've been through too
I
much.
want to emphasize that there is no agreement in place yet
Exactly.
for the courts to make that exchange of property with the county. They're still negotiating that agreement.
Right.
And that is not in place. So there's no, even though the county has taken possession of the property through that option agreement that they had, there is still no agreement, and it's a ways away still, the agreement between the county and the state to transfer that property. So that's the only caution that I make. I'm not opposed to us agendaing this and looking at doing something, but we would prepare a report, and that's a caution that I would put in it. But, so the only question to the council right now would be, would you like to agendize it for your next meeting?
I'd like to also add that how hard the county has worked towards this and keeping it within our area. And everybody's really worked hard. It just hasn't, it's not apparent, but everybody's really worked hard to try to keep this courthouse within the city limits, including transportation. So I just, I don't want to be a naysayer. I don't want folks to think that I'm not in favor of it. But again, my concern is that we've worked so hard and it's been such a lengthy process that I just would hate to see it turned upside down.
Did I, excuse me, did I hear the attorney say, did I hear that correctly when he said it wouldn't hurt? Meaning, if we write a letter, they're not going to yank and get mad at us for... So I don't see, if that's the case, I don't see, maybe the ship has sailed, maybe it's out of our jurisdiction, but just to show good faith to our merchants and
To show our merchants
right.
that we...
And to stress the
And
importance
if
of the
it can't-
courthouse to our community.
Yeah, and I don't know if it would be the council, I mean, we don't have to, but just as a city, this is what the city is saying, and we don't want it if you're not going to do it, but as a city, this is what we're hearing. You guys aren't here to hear this, and like, the full house that we get, and they're scared. So you said it couldn't hurt.
No, as long as it's a properly worded letter and we're not threatening them with litigation
Yeah, we
and
don't
then
want
say
threats.
nuts to you guys, you know, because they have the ability to pull everybody out of that courthouse and put them down in El Dorado Hills in a building somewhere if they want to.
And I would not take that stance, is it? No.
So we'll schedule it for the next agenda.
We're going to schedule what?
I don't, this discussion, whether or not to send a letter and the content of the letter.
Do you think a whole city council meeting is the place to do that? I mean,
We have to.
I was wondering like a community meeting or something.
Well, but in order to authorize us to take action to send a letter, we need council
At least we could have the discussion more. Once it's on the agenda, if you don't like it, tell everybody and we'll all come to a conclusion. It might not be direct letter, but
I guess what I'm looking for is there at least a majority of the council saying, yeah, go ahead and schedule it for the next agenda.
I'll just say that if that is the council's pleasure, that we have to have some representatives from the county and what it means to what the county perhaps has done, because I think that is really important. And just to have Patty, I mean, no offense, but just to have you say everyone's been working on it, it's been a, you know.
No,
it's
and
not
I
fair.
couldn't agree more.
And I just don't know. I don't know what we're opening.
Well, Cleve has gone to all the meetings and he's certainly got all the information.
Well, what?
I'm sure reams
most of the meetings, let's
of
put it that, but
information
yeah.
that he could provide us with a synopsis, details of what all that has transpired, and maybe when folks see that and see that, you know, what's transpired, I don't know.
I think it's such an important topic of our town, and not to say that we're going to, stop this project from staying in Placerville, but in for transparency's sake and to have the discussion, that makes sense. And perhaps, even Jack could come and, give his background on what's, just so we all understand all of the ramifications of this very complicated process.
Yeah,
And
I
then-
agree.
then move
I just
forward.
think that maybe what I said previously is that if we lay it all out as to what has transpired, that maybe it might help make sense to the folks, and that they see that we really have their,
And maybe we could, I would think too, maybe we can, and I'll even do this. I will go out and I will do a little fact finding to find out what the history of the knowledge is. Because Councilmember Patton's, I think, I'm reading her concern as you could be opening up a can of worms for no good reason. This is a can of worms that if this document has gotten whatever, notice of determination or whatever it is for the state document, I forget if one's a determination and one's a final. On the federal side, if it's been done, then it's done, and that document's done, and no one's going to open it. The state's not going to want to do it, and probably any letter we write's not going to make that happen. And we may not want that to happen. But we could find out kind of what the history of all this thing is. How many times were there meetings? When did these things get noticed? Who did get notifications? I mean, a lot of property owners might have gotten notifications because, when people send out notifications, they send them to the property owners. Well, a lot of property owners might have gotten notifications downtown and not bothered to tell their tenants. Who knows? That could have happened. They get it in a notification. The property owner gets a notification. Oh, gosh, I don't know what this is. They throw it away. They don't think about that stuff. But they might not even told them. Who knows? Who knows how many times the PDA talked about this? We have people coming in and say, well, I didn't hear about it. Well, if it was my business, I would want to know. I would have found out. I've worked on a lot of these things. Usually people that are really into it and having their livelihoods threatened, like those water people and the groundwater stuff, you don't have to send them a notice. They know what's going to happen before it happens. But we could find all that out in the next week and a half or so, and that would be very interesting, I think.
Mr. Morris? Do you want
Yes,
to do that? Look into all this and get the background?
If you would like me to, I work for you.
Yes.
I don't think we need anything really lengthy, just an overall as when it
Timeline.
transpired, et cetera, et cetera.
An overall timeline and allow us to talk about what we
you
want
leaving
in
us?
a letter and then move forward. So,
Sounds perfect.
All right.
sounds good.
We'll schedule it for your next
All
meeting.
right.
Thank you for indulging.
Okay, upcoming items.
Actually, I have one more agenda item. I'm so sorry. This was an issue that has come to light. It's come to a head and that we need to address now. There's and Pierre, this is going to involve you. This is a challenge on Upper Broadway, and it has to do with the smoke shop and repeated violations of our sign code and other egregious offensive acts. Mainly, this last weekend, there were some pornographic posters, framed posters, laid in front of another tenant's business with offensive language on them that are so egregious I can't even talk about in public. And so I talked to the previous property owner of this property on Upper Broadway, and they no longer own it. It's owned by an investment company in Texas. There is no on-site owner with the smoke shop. And the insurance agency that is there have had clients say they are no longer going to do business with them and choose another State Farm agent because the smoke shop is causing such a nuisance and on this. So my direction for staff is, what can we do about this? Is it a matter of enforcing the sign code? What about these pornographic images, which I did send you pictures of? I'd like a report back as to what we can do about this, because it's right across, it's right down the street from Schnell School. It's denigrating Upper Broadway, and we cannot allow this to continue. So, and I know everyone here would be as, offended as I am about this. So.
Wendy, you said there's no on-site owner, or?
No, the owner does not work in the smoke shop.
Is there a manager then?
There's probably a daily manager, but the owner of the business is not there. It's an investment company in Texas, that owns the property. So.
And the property owner, I'm sure we must know the property owner.
It's an investment company in Texas, the property owner.
The property owner.
Yeah, the property owner.
Not the...
Owns that whole strip.
But
right.
the business owner.
The business owner does not work in the business.
But is he or she?
I don't know.
I think, actually, if I could just tag on to this, I think the idea of an overview of the sign ordinances, and then when there are violations, how can the city be proactive in making our town better? And I don't want to just pick on this one, although it sounds, I didn't see this, but I would have been horrified. But I know that we just have series of curve signs pop up here and there, and I mean it's something. It's not anything new. We've had it over the last 20 years where signs all of a sudden appear. But this particular location, this business location that's now owned by this investment company, I would really like to see how many violations, code violations, whatever, that if the city could use a little bit stronger arm tactic in enforcing.
Let me, Pierre may want to comment on this too, but let me just state that a couple of things. We did already receive some complaints on this prior to the one that you sent in, about the same time you sent in. My answer to Councilmember Patton is simple. It's a staffing issue. That's a code enforcement issue, and we're basically responding to complaints. We're not being proactive due to our staffing levels. We use the same people primarily for code enforcement we do to do our building inspections, and they are both, you know, part-time person and a part-time through the consultant that we use, and so, you know, that's something maybe you want to consider as part of your budget coming up this next year, looking at staffing regarding code enforcement.
But wouldn't things like pornographic signs, wouldn't that come under a different jurisdiction? I mean, maybe we could arrest them, throw them in jail.
They were for sale. They were art for sale on the sidewalk.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, but still.
Well, and what that comes down to is, you know, they don't have a permit to have items outside their store for sale. So, but it is related to a code enforcement issue.
Okay.
So, yeah. Pierre, do you want to add anything?
Sure. Basically, we have received 3 separate complaints from citizens that were offended by the signage. So basically, staff did go out to the site, took photographs, and as Councilmember Thomas said, some of the signs were very, very offensive. In fact, some of them are so profound that the decorum prevents me discussing it here. But anyway, so the next step will be preparing a letter that we'll send to the property owner, basically giving them a period of time to comply, indicating that it can be $100 fine per violation, so we can $100 per sign. And also, outside sale of merchandise is also a violation of the code. So we will identify all the various violations and send a certified letter to the property owner. Staff did in the past. We received a complaint, I'm thinking this is about 6 months ago, from somebody with the school that felt that the sale of tobacco and the signage of selling tobacco products was too close to the school. So we looked into that. There wasn't any prohibition of the sale of tobacco per se, but it was the banners and such. But our code did allow a period of time when a business first opens, they're going to have banners, and I believe that's a 30-day or 60-day period of time. I can't recall which one. But they are in violation, and I want you to know that staff is then proceeding with the appropriate steps to bring them into compliance.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add that because of how bad these pictures were, and that is a violation to have those outside for sale. I'm going to work with the police department because it happened on a weekend. We're not open, we're not staffed. I'll work with the police department if it occurs again on a weekend, if they can monitor and go enforce that, to let them know that they can't have those outside. They can have them in their store, but they can't have them outside, at least until we work on other solutions to this. So.
Thank you so much.
And that was my thought, that maybe law enforcement on a situation like that could get involved.
And I have one more agenda item. I'm so sorry.
Okay, that's all right.
And this staff, I know you are so slammed. This is bring it back at your when it works for you. But I think we need to keep the discussion going about our roads. So what I would ask the council to do is let's continue the discussion on our road challenges. And I'd like to have staff come back with a time that we could have a neighborhood chat for that. If you could come back with the council's concurrence, let's set a date for a neighborhood chat to keep the discussion going about our roads. Perhaps show Margot's presentation again. We have that in our control, and get community feedback to keep this, in everyone's mind. Also, as Kathy Lishman said earlier, how can we maybe use our utility bills in a more proactive manner to get information out to our public? And would love to have staff's idea on how we can use the utility bills to perhaps have flyers that help inform the public and of some of the issues and ongoing challenges with our city. So those are the two things. I'd like to see how can we use our utility bills more effectively, and could we set a date for a neighborhood chat for our roads discussion with the council's
Not too long ago, we had a discussion about using our utility bills, and I can't remember what the reasons were that I think maybe the letter was time consuming. We didn't have staff to.
Well, just the fact of using the utility bills, and we can figure out a
We could
mechanism
still
to do
figure
that.
out some sort of a mechanism
Sure.
that somebody could. And I also I remember when we joined the parade on Facebook that all these posts were, that's why we joined, is that so that we could let the folks, remember they came from in the audience and they said, we really would like you folks to do this, and that'll give us notification. So I don't do Facebook, so is this not working?
We do put
Okay.
most of our items on Facebook,
Pictures.
and let them know what's going on.
Okay, so maybe the reason they're not getting the information is they're not reading their Facebook.
Yeah. Well, if you're referring to, I don't want to go back to that, but the courthouse EIR, that
Yes.
was not on Facebook.
Okay.
That
Oh,
was,
okay.
again, I noted that was my error.
Oh, okay,
so.
okay.
I think, and I.
But we try to get most
No,
things
no,
on. The most recent, the final EIR with the 10-day notice was put on Facebook and our website.
Okay.
But the previous one was not.
Okay. Tricia?
I was just going to say, along with what Wendy's saying in the utility bill, you look at your utility bill once every how often, and you're, compared to Facebook, or I was just going to say that's good too, but in addition to social media and the website, because that's really, like we had the young businessman here tonight saying, I don't read the newspaper. He probably doesn't look at his utility bill, but when he's writing his check, but guaranteed, our city website is nice, but it seems like they just update the profile picture, and there's not a lot of information.
That's all I ever see.
And the Facebook could also be better with that.
So having a comprehensive kind of program.
Yeah,
to
altogether.
reach-
Because
yeah,
the
exactly, altogether.
utility people,
Right.
that would reach them. They might not like Patty have
Right.
Facebook. So
Right.
in conjunction, we can get it done.
My recollection of the letter with the utility bill was it was like, this is what your Measure H dollars are doing. It wasn't a regular, all the time, every bill statement, but I think Facebook could be better utilized, because I look at Facebook all the time, and all I ever see is the profiles changing. I don't see, and since it's a one-way window,
Right.
then you're just feeding information. So if we did it once a week, I don't know if that would be too time-consuming for our staff. But once a week, put something on there. I mean, even if it's just an update on Main Street's rehab, or those pictures of the Survey Monkey. That Survey Monkey. Why couldn't? I mean, I guess it couldn't be because it's not two-way, but where they could go to get that Survey Monkey on the designs for the elements of Main Street.
I thought that was on Facebook. You haven't seen that?
On Facebook?
Yeah.
It's on I've seen it
So
on the
this-
website.
this
The website, it was supposed to go on Facebook too, but
I haven't seen it
I'll
on-
check and see. I don't.
Well, it's
I'm
not
I'm not a
interactive, so it's
Facebooker,
hard.
so
'cause
I
you
have to
can't-
rely on others to tell me what's
Yeah.
happening.
I haven't seen it, but that doesn't mean
Okay.
anyways. So with that, can we adjourn?
Well, you might have to.
No.
No, she's got to get another word in.
Upcoming items.
Can I, before you do that, under staff reports, I just need to mention one thing. We have on your schedule a budget capital workshop for March 17th. we're requesting to move that back to April 7th, right?
Oh, right.
Is that all right with everyone?
What?
Move it to April 7th.
Hang on.
That's the first Tuesday. Planning has told us that they do not need to hold a planning commission meeting that night. So it's the first Tuesday in April rather than March 17th. Hopefully that works for everyone. We just need a little bit more time to put that. Uh-oh, Carol's saying it doesn't work for her.
Tuesday, yeah.
April 7th?
April 7th. Oh, no, it's catching.
Everybody's choking.
What is this about? This is a budget hearing?
This is the capital improvement and capital equipment workshop that we talked about doing.
Wouldn't be my first choice, let me put it that way.
Okay.
But if everybody else is available.
Yeah, one of the toughest times we have is getting this building. It's extremely, Mr. Yule is too efficient in scheduling his programs, and so it's really tough. But
Let's go to that date.
What about the 31st of March?
the building's not available. I
That's the
tried that
problem.
one first.
How can I come to a CAP workshop? It's Rick Dyer's birthday. I mean, really. Rick Dyer's birthday. Priorities. But I'll be here.
Invite him to
Let's
come. and
let's
sing.
start
Oh,
it.
We'll sing
yeah.
happy birthday to him.
Like he's not happy before this.
Let's start at 2 in the afternoon and we'll be done by 5.
Yeah. I'm sorry, what did he say?
Let's start at 2 in the afternoon. We'll be done by 5.
I still
Could
work.
do that.
I still work for a living.
I know.
Okay, yeah, no, if you want to make it 2 or 3,
Well, if you let me know what, I think everybody else could meet
Yeah, we
earlier.
could
Is
do
that
earlier.
right?
let's do, how about 3?
3 o'clock?
Yeah.
We can.
Is that, well, is this building available?
Would that work, Steve? Do you know?
I'll make it work.
Okay. So 3 o'clock on April 7th then, and we'll figure probably 3 hours, Dave, should be plenty,
That should be plenty.
maybe shorter.
2 to 3 hours.
That'll depend on what questions you guys have. But. Okay, that's all I have. And then you see the upcoming items there. You can read those. And
Is that all right with everyone? Anyone want to add or subtract? Okay, with that, I am going to adjourn the meeting in.
Mayor Borelli, I'm sorry, just real quickly, you're adjourning tonight to the Planning Commission interviews, excuse me,
I'm
Recreation
sorry,
and Park
so-
Commission interviews on March 17th, rather than the next council meeting.
And those are at 6 o'clock, right?
6 PM in this building on March 17th, in place of another canceled Planning Commission meeting. So it'll be Recreation and Park Commission interviews at 6 PM in this building on March 17th. We have 5 candidates for the 3 seats.
That's at 6?
6 p.m.
March 17th.
Yeah. Just sending you. I think he's actually
Park and Rec.
I've got it. Okay, I'm good. I'm good.
Oh, this is 5:30. Closed session? We have a 5:30 closed session on March 17th.
oh, right. Is that right, Susan? They do closed session first, right, at 5:30 for that?
I apologize. I said the council, their agendas tonight, and Vice Mayor Patton is correct. Yes, usually you meet at 5:30 in closed session in the kitchen so that you can go over the applications and square away who's going to ask which question. And then the actual interviews take place in this room, open to the public at 6 p.m.
Okay, so 5:30 in the kitchen.
With the candlestick. You probably don't even know what I'm talking about, do you? I knew it.
What is it?
The game of Clue.
Okay,
Uh-oh. Will they kill each other with the stuff?
Whatever.
Yeah.
okay. Good, try it again. I'm going to adjourn the meeting in Bob Springer's name and ask that our clerk send a letter of condolence to the family. Okay, the meeting is adjourned.